Hello everybody. Looks like the chat's messed up here. I don't know what the hell's going on here. Maybe that'll fix it. Anyways. Okay, so today we are starting a new series. I'm just going to do a quick audio check for one moment. Sorry. Alright, sounds good. Sounds good. Alright. Oh boy, yeah, you're right. Yikes. Okay. So, welcome everybody to Forever Conscious Research Channel. Hope you're all doing well. It's been a while since we've seen each other. I've been working on that Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap research guide, which it's going to be a big series, and it's taken me quite a while to compile it, but it's being worked on, I promise. Of course, my camera fails. Okay, let's see here. I apologize, guys. Swear to God, no matter how much I prepare, there's always something that happens here. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, we go. All right, hello. So, welcome back to Forever Conscious Research Channel. Hope you're doing well. We just doing that for editing purposes. We're going to be discussing Michael Newton's book, Destiny of Souls, and it will be going over 70 case studies of life between lives. This is the second book of Michael Newton's that I've done a full commentary on in an effort to help people see the truth about where we live and what is going on Earth and out in the astral subrealms of control. We have all fallen for continually reincarnating here on Earth, lifetime after lifetime, and even though we did consent to this experience, we have been manipulated every step of the way by outside forces, and the evidence isn't just small, it's overwhelming, and frankly cannot be denied once you've put some time into this. So anyone that's new here, just reserve your thoughts on what this topic is just for a moment, suspend your belief, and give it a chance and listen to what's actually being said in these regressions. For those who are also new or have not yet checked out my previous commentary of Journey of Souls, there is a playlist in the home page of the channel. And there's also a Reincarnation Soul Trap playlist as well where the book is contained, and there will be a playlist for this series as well. The duration of each video in this series is still to be determined. I'm kind of just going to take it by air and see how things go. But I hope to have it fully done over the next couple weeks. So there'll be another session for part 2 sometime this weekend, possibly Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure which day yet, but there'll be an announcement in the community tab for anyone new or interested. Please subscribe and hit the bell for all notifications. I've been getting a lot of people saying that they are not getting notifications. Well, the only thing is, if it's not a system thing, then it could be because all notifications aren't set. And there also is 2 backup channels for here on YouTube as well, located in the description tab as well as the home page of the channel. And there's also an Odyssey account for anyone who has Odyssey or would like to check out Odyssey. Go give it a whirl. That's a great site, and I do exclusive live streams over there. If you're new, there's an invite link, gives you some free crypto, blah, 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 and there's a Twitter. All right, now that we got all that crap out of the way, we're going to get started. It's basically, we've got in the beginning an introduction. I'll drop in a few times at that, and then the case studies start, I believe, somewhere around the 15-minute mark, somewhere about there. So hang tight. Listen to what he has to say for the introduction, and let's get this show on the road. And thank you, everybody, for joining me. I hope you're doing well, and let's go.
Why are we here? Where are we going?
Oh, sorry, let me just rewind that just a bit.
Why are we here? Introduction. Who are we? Why are we here? Where are we going? I endeavored to answer these age-old questions with my first book, Journey of Souls, published in 1994 by Llewellyn. Many people told me the book provided a spiritual awakening of their inner selves because they had never before been able to read in such detail about what life is like in the spirit world. They also said the information validated deep-seated feelings about their soul living on after physical death and the purpose of returning to Earth. Once the book was in print, and later translated into other languages, I received inquiries from readers around the world asking me if there was going to be a second book. For a long while, I resisted these suggestions. All my years of original research had been difficult to collect, organize, and finally write as a comprehensive study of our immortal life. I felt I had done enough. In the introduction to Journey of Souls, I explained my background as a traditional hypnotherapist and how skeptical I had been about the use of hypnosis for metaphysical regression. In 1947, at age 15, I placed my first subject in hypnosis, so I was definitely old school and not a new ager. Thus, when I unintentionally opened the gateway to the spirit world with a client, I was stunned. It seemed to me that most past life regressionists thought our life between lives was just a hazy limbo that only served as a bridge.
Now, I just want to add here that he claims he's not a new ager, but I disagree. I think he absolutely is, and as we go along, I think you'll probably agree with that. It's not necessarily how we look at New Age as we see it in all the crap out there. You know, the spiritual, super lovey-dovey everything. But he excuses away a lot of things. And everything is soul growth and love and this, kind of stuff like that. It's all... So there's an issue there. Okay, so even though he says that, I disagree, frankly.
From one past life to the next. It was soon evident I had to find out for myself the steps necessary to reach and unlock a subject's memory of their existence in this mysterious place. After more years of quiet research, I was finally able to construct a working model of spirit world structure and realized how therapeutic this process could be for a client. I also found that it did not matter if a person was an atheist, deeply religious, or believed in any philosophical persuasion in between. Once they were in the proper superconscious state of hypnosis, all were consistent in their reports. It was for this reason that I became what I have come to call a spiritual regressionist. This is a hypnotherapist specializing in life after death. I wrote Journey of Souls to give the public a foundation of information, presented in a tight, orderly progression of events of what it is like to die and cross over, who meets us, where we go, and what we do as souls in the spirit world before choosing our next body for reincarnation. This format was
before we're tricked into it, okay? Let's get that straight.
Designed as a travelogue through time, using actual case histories from clients who told me of their past experiences between former lives. Thus, Journey of Souls was not another past life book about reincarnation, but rather broke new ground in metaphysical research, which had been virtually unexplored by the use of hypnosis.
I'll give him that.
During the decade of the 1980s, while I was formulating a working model of the world between lives, I closed my practice to all other types of hypnotherapy. I became obsessed with unraveling the secrets of the spirit world as I built up a high volume of cases.
I will say that there was past life regression prior to him coming on the scene, so it was by no means new, but he really put an effort out there to collect probably more information than anyone to date. And there's others too, but just to clarify, there was we can look back through some older texts and see that it's been around. How long? That's a question I don't know the answer to, but okay, let's move on.
Made me more comfortable with the validity and reliability of my earlier findings. While these years of specialized research into the spirit world rolled on, I worked practically in seclusion, with only my clients knowing about this work, and only as it pertained to them and their friends. I even stayed out of metaphysical bookstores because I wanted absolute freedom from outside bias. Today, I still believe my self-imposed isolation and not speaking out publicly was the right decision. When I left Los Angeles to retire in the Sierra Nevada mountains and write Journey of Souls, I expected to slip into quiet anonymity. This proved to be a delusion. Most of the material presented in the book had never been published before, and I began receiving a great deal of mail through my publisher. I owe Llewellyn a debt of gratitude for having the insight and courage to introduce my research to the public. Soon after publication, I was sent out on road trips to give lectures and engage in radio and TV interviews. People wanted more details of the spirit world and continued to ask if I had additional research material. I had to answer yes. Actually, I still had a wide variety of unreported information that I assumed would be too much for the public to accept from an unknown author. Despite the fact people found Journey of Souls very inspirational, I resisted the idea of writing a sequel. I decided on a compromise. With the printing of the 5th edition, an index was added to Journey of Souls, along with a new cover and some added paragraphs to meet requests for greater clarification about specific issues. This was not enough. The volume of mail I was receiving each week continued to increase dramatically with queries about life after death. People now began to seek me out, and I decided to practice again on a limited basis. I noticed a higher percentage of more developed souls. Clients must wait a long time to see me due to my semi-retirement and greatly reduced client load. As a result, I have fewer young souls in psychological crises and more cases with clients who are able to be patient. These people wish to unlock the meaning behind certain issues by tapping into their spiritual memories in order to fine-tune specific goals in life. Many are healers and teachers themselves who feel comfortable entrusting me with added information about their soul life between lives. In turn, I hope I have helped them on their paths. During all this time, the public perception...
There is no doubt that he's done a lot of good for people. And, you know, we can't underestimate his efforts at all, because he did help a lot of people. When you go to a regression session and you have things like phobias or just fears, things like that, of which can be rooted back to previous traumas, things like that, even in this lifetime, they can help a person greatly. So he did do a lot of good. It's his interpretation of the information that's the problem. It's his interpretation of what these people are saying versus what he's trying to convey. And he even admits openly, early on in the book, that he had guides. Okay, so he's also put his spin in there big time, and I think people have read the book Journey of Souls or this book, or you can see that. You can clearly see that, and that's an issue. And whereas with Journey of Souls, I didn't see many leading questions, but there were a couple in this one. Okay, so I'll point those out as we go along. Okay, let's just continue.
Remained that I had not let go of all my secrets. Eventually, my mind began to turn on how I should approach a second book. The effect of all I have described has brought about the birth of Destiny of Souls. I consider my first book to have been a pilgrimage through the spirit world on a great river of eternity. The voyage began at the mouth of the river with the moment of physical death and ended at the place where we return into a new body. I had gone upriver toward the source as far as I was able in Journey of Souls. This has not changed. Although the memory of making this trip countless times is in the mind of every person, no one who is still incarnating seems to have the capacity to take me further. Destiny of Souls is intended to convey travelers on a second expedition along the river, with side trips up major tributaries for more detailed exploration. During our travels together on this second trip, I want to uncover more of the hidden aspects of the route to give people a greater perspective of the whole. I have designed this book by topical categories rather than by progressive time and location. Thus, I have overlapped the time frames of normal soul movement between spiritual locations to fully analyze these experiences. I have also tried to offer listeners a look at the same elements of soul life from different case perspectives. Destiny of Souls is intended to expand our understanding of the incredible sense of order and planning which exists for the benefit of human beings.
All right, right there. Okay, order and planning for the betterment of human beings, or however he worded it. Okay, here we go with just these preconceived notions about everything, and so much is just discarded, and not just discarded, but just explained away. As we've talked about here, humanity has got the biggest case of Stockholm Syndrome on steroids imaginable. We will explain away and justify our captors every turn we can. Everywhere we go, we see that. And it's no different with Dr. Newton. So just wanted to put that out there.
At the same time, it is my intention that this second tour into the wonders of the spirit world be fresh and enjoyable for the unseasoned traveler as well. For first-time listeners of my work, The opening chapter will give a condensed overview of what I have discovered about our life between lives. I hope this summary will add to your understanding of what follows, and perhaps encourage you to eventually listen to my foundational book. So, as we begin this second journey together, I want to thank all of you who have given me so much support for the hard work necessary to unlock the spiritual doorways of the mind. These associations, combined with the indulgence of many guides, particularly my own, have given me the energy to continue the task. I feel truly blessed to have been chosen as one of the messengers for this significant work. 1. The spirit world. At the moment of death, our soul rises out of its host body. If the soul is older and has experience from many former lives, it knows immediately it has been set free and is going home. These advanced souls need no one to greet them. However, most souls I work with are met by guides just outside Earth's astral plane. A young soul, or a child who has died, may be a little disoriented until someone comes closer to ground level for them. There are souls who choose to remain at the scene of their death for a while. Most wish to leave at once. Time has no meaning in the spirit world. Discarnates, who choose to comfort someone who is grieving, or have other reasons to stay near the place of their death for a while, experience no sense of time loss. This becomes now time for the soul, as opposed to linear time. As they move further away from Earth, souls experience an increasingly brilliant light around them. Some will briefly see a grayish darkness and will sense passing through a tunnel or portal. The differences between these two phenomena depend upon the exit speed of the soul, which in turn relates to their experience. The pulling sensation from our guides may be gentle or forceful, depending upon the soul's maturity and capacity for rapid change. In the early stages of their exit, all souls encounter a wispy cloudiness around them that soon becomes clear, enabling them to look off into a vast distance. This is the moment when the average soul sees a ghostly form of energy coming toward them. This figure may be a loving soulmate or two, but more often than not, it is our guide. In circumstances where we are met by a spouse or friend who has passed on before us, our guide is also close by, so they can take over the transition process.
Did you hear that? We're with our guide so they can take over the transition process. Let's just hear that beauty one more time.
In circumstances where we are met by a spouse or friend who has passed on before us, our guide is also close by, so they can take over the transition process.
Unreal.
In all my years of research, I have never had a single subject who was met by a major religious figure, such as Jesus or Buddha. Still, the loving essence of the great teachers from Earth is within the personal guides who are assigned to us. By the time souls become reoriented to the place they call home, their earthliness has changed. They are no longer quite human in the way we think of a human being, with a particular emotional, temperamental, and physical makeup. For instance, they don't grieve about their recent physical death in the way their loved ones will. It is our souls that make us human on Earth, but without our bodies, we are no longer Homo sapiens. The soul has such majesty that it is beyond description.
It's beyond description. The soul. Remember, soul and spirit are two different things. The soul, in my opinion, some people may disagree, but this is just my opinion. The soul is an attachment. It's like a governor. Just like the body is, okay? When we're down here, we have the body and the soul, okay? The spirit is your true essence. But the soul is related to this realm and the astral sub-realms of control. That's my opinion on it, though. So make of it what you will.
I tend to think of souls as intelligent light forms of energy. Right after death, souls suddenly feel different because they are no longer encumbered by a temporary host body with a brain and central nervous system. Some take longer to adjust than others. The energy of the soul is able to divide into identical parts, similar to a hologram. It may live parallel lives in other bodies, although...
Now, see, do you hear that? That's a truth right there. Without really, he's saying it, but he's not saying it, because what he's compared to. Here, listen to it, because we do live in some sort of holoverse. It's just we have this, physical surroundings which disguises it. That's the best way I can put it. So let me just rewind here just so you can hear how he kind of discloses this. And even in near-death experiences, DMT and ayahuasca trips that break through, out-of-body experiences as astral projection, things like that, people often use the term virtual reality or holograph. So he brings it up here, but kind of puts a spin on it.
The energy of the soul is able to divide into identical parts, similar to a hologram. It may live parallel lives in other bodies, although this is much less common than we read about. However,
it's much less common than we read about, but we really don't know if it's got multiple victims that it's preying on.
Because of the dual capability of all souls, part of our light energy always remains behind in the spirit world. Thus, it is possible to see your mother upon returning from a life, even though she may have died 30 Earth years before and reincarnated again. Orientation periods with our guides.
Now, and I'm just pausing in a lot here, but it's important parts. He's talking about how even if your mother passes away 30 years ago, and they've already likely reincarnated or what have you, and then you die, okay? You're going to still see Mama waiting at the gates to try and yank you on over, which really just, again, puts out there that these are fake. They're false. They're illusions, because their job, okay, when Mama shows up, when you die, okay, and she's been dead for 30 some odd years, the job of her is to convince you and manipulate and deceive you to go to the light tunnel. That's what the job is. The consent has to be given. Once you're communicating with Mama and consenting to that communication, and then Mama asks you to go to the light tunnel. Come on, son, let's go. Come on, daughter, let's go. Come on, let's go. We gotta go. You gotta come with us. And then the cycle begins yet again. Your mind is wiped. You end up back here. Born ignorant under the veil of forgetfulness.
Which take place before joining our cluster group, vary between souls and between different lives for the same soul. This is a quiet time for counseling, with the opportunity to vent any frustrations we have about the life just ended. Orientation is intended to be an initial debriefing session, with gentle probing by perceptive, caring teacher guides.
I'm sorry again for pausing it, but here, one more time.
Orientation is intended to be an initial debriefing session, with gentle probing by perceptive, caring teacher guides.
Orientation, probing by teacher guides. Controllers. Those who look to control you.
The meeting may be long or short, depending upon the circumstances of what we did or did not accomplish with regard to our life contract. Special karmic issues are also reviewed, although they will be discussed later in minute detail within our soul cluster group. The returning energy of some souls will not be sent back into their soul group right away. These are the souls who were contaminated by their physical bodies and became involved with evil acts. There is a difference between wrongdoing with no premeditated desire to hurt someone
No, there
and
isn't.
intentional evil. The degrees of harm to others from mischief to malevolence are carefully evaluated. Those souls who have been associated with evil are taken to special centers, which some clients call intensive care units. Here, I am told, their energy is remodeled to make it whole again. Depending.
All right. I mean, there's so much wrong with this. You can clearly see the world that we live in, that has got to be the biggest load of crap ever. Okay? We have got a historic narrative to go off of, okay, that continually presents itself of people's sovereignty and freedom and free will trying to be dismantled at every turn for as far back as we have records for, okay? These parasites that run this place have been doing it forever, for as far back as we can see. There is no way for us to see anything beyond that. That's just the fact of the matter, okay? So it's sad. It's really sad that is the case, but that's part of how this whole thing starts to unfold, because you have to kind of see how society is now, how society has been in the past, and how there have always been this force trying to control us. Well, the same thing goes on up in the astral realms of control, and it's really despicable stuff. But there is no debriefing type situation where the most evil of evil have their energy fixed and this and that. No, if anything, they're being promoted. If anything. That's how I see it. Otherwise, we'd be living in a different world. Okay? Let's continue.
Upon the nature of their transgressions, these souls could be rather quickly returned to earth. They might well choose to serve as the victims of others' evil acts in the next life. Still, if their actions were prolonged and especially cruel over a number of lives, this would denote a pattern of wrongful behavior. Such souls could spend a long while in solitary spiritual existence, possibly over 1,000 Earth years. A guiding principle in the spirit world is that wrongdoing, intentional or unintentional, on the part of all souls, will need to be redressed in some form in a future life. This is not considered punishment or even penance, as much as an opportunity for karmic growth. There is no hell for souls, except perhaps on earth.
Boy, I really put that one out there, except on earth. And, the whole karma situation is another road we can go down. We're going to talk about it, obviously, in this series. But for those interested, I also did the Karma and Sinner Deception. Feel free to check that video out.
Some lives are so difficult that the soul arrives home very tired. Despite the energy rejuvenation process initiated by our guides, who combine their energy with ours at the gateway, we may still have a depleted energy flow. In these cases, more rest and solitude may be called for rather than celebrations. Indeed, many souls who desire rest receive it before reunification with their groups. Our soul groups may be boisterous or subdued, but they are respectful of what we have gone through during an incarnation. All groups welcome back their friends in their own way, with deep love and camaraderie. Homecoming is a joyous interlude, especially following a physical life where there might not have been much karmic contact with our intimate soulmates. Most of my subjects tell me they are welcomed back with hugs, laughter, and much humor, which I find to be a hallmark of life in the spirit world. The really effusive groups, who have planned elaborate celebrations for the returning soul, may suspend all their other activities. One subject of mine had this to say about his homecoming welcome. After my last life, my group organized one hell of a party, with music, wine, dancing, and singing. They arranged everything to look like a classical Roman festival with marble halls, togas, and all the exotic furnishings prevalent in our many lives together in the ancient world.
Okay, so we have the soul groups, which was talked about obviously in book 1, on how we have these, groups of friends, loved ones up there, and we oftentimes are with them while we're down here as well, through various incarnations. Now, you see how this is almost like it's a big party. It's a greasing the wheels, buttering up the arrival. You made it. You made it through the hell on earth down there, and all of a sudden you're back. Let's have a party with togas and Roman architecture and God knows what else. And it's the continual cycle of just explaining away what you just went through as if it's justified. The never-ending cycle of reincarnation.
World. Melissa, a primary soulmate, was waiting for me right up front, recreating the age that I remember her best and looking as radiant as ever. Soul groups range between 3 and 25 members, with the average having about 15. There are times when souls from nearby cluster groups may want to connect with each other. Often, this activity involves older souls who have made many friends from other groups with whom they have been associated over hundreds of past lives.
Now, see, my opinion, and we talked about this in the last series, is that the ones that are allowed to do that, where they can cross soul groups and the quote-unquote guides or masters, whatever the heck they want to call themselves, that are basically the head teacher of the group, that keeps you in line. It's going to keep you in line. So he's saying right here that the ones who likely do intermingle cross soul groups are the ones who have been around a long time. They're the most indoctrinated, the most the system isn't as worried about them crossing over and having a possible truth bomb blow up in the soul group's face. So they're part of the system. They've become so lost that they are allowed to cross groups and likely further the indoctrination.
1 million viewers in the U.S. saw the TV show Sightings, produced by Paramount in 1995, which aired a segment about my work. Those who watched this show about life after death may remember one of my clients, by the name of Colleen, who spoke about a session we had together. She described returning to the spirit world after a former life to find a spectacular 17th century full-dress ball in progress. My subject saw over 100 people who came to celebrate her return. A time and place she had loved was lavishly reproduced, so Colleen could begin the process of renewal in style. Thus, homecoming can take place in 2 types of settings. A few souls might briefly meet a returning soul at the gateway, and then leave in favor of a guide who takes them through some preliminary orientation. More commonly, the welcoming committee waits until the soul actually returns to their spirit group. This group may be isolated in a classroom, gathered around the steps of a temple, sitting in a garden, or the returning soul could encounter many groups in a study hall atmosphere. Souls who pass by other clusters on the way to their own birth often remark that other souls with whom they have been associated in past lives will look up and acknowledge their return with a smile or wave. How a subject views their group cluster setting is based upon the soul's state of advancement, although memories of a schoolroom atmosphere are always very clear.
Aha! Aha! Hear that? Memories of a school setting are always present and clear. And depends on your advancement. It's it. Depends on your advancement. You're not allowed to go outside this. You've got to take orders. Let's just rewind that. It's very telling.
They have been associated in past lives will look up and acknowledge their return with a smile or wave. How a subject views their group cluster setting is based upon the soul's state of advancement, although memories of a schoolroom atmosphere are always very clear.
Ugh.
In the spirit world, educational placement depends upon the level of soul development.
Oh.
Simply because a soul has been incarnating on Earth since the Stone Age
Pyramid
is no
scheme.
guarantee of high attainment. In my lectures, I often remark about a client who took 4,000 years of past lives finally to conquer jealousy.
Ugh.
I can report he is not a jealous person today, yet he has made little progress with fighting his own intolerance. It takes some students longer to get through certain lessons, just as in earthly classrooms. On the other hand, all highly advanced souls are old souls in terms of both knowledge and experience.
Can you believe that? 4,000 years for just that? 4,000. A nightmare. A freaking nightmare.
In Journey of Souls, I broadly classified souls as beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and gave case examples of each, while explaining there are fine nuances of development among these categories. Generally, the composition of a group of souls is made up of beings at about the same level of advancement, although they have their individual strengths and shortcomings. These attributes give the group balance. Souls assist one another with the cognitive aspects of absorbing information from life experiences, as well as reviewing the way they handled the feelings and emotions of their host bodies directly related to those experiences. Every aspect of a life is dissected, even to the extent of reverse role-playing in the group, to bring greater awareness. By the time souls reach the intermediate levels, they begin to specialize in those major areas of interest where certain skills have been demonstrated. I will discuss these in more depth as we get further along in other chapters. One very meaningful aspect of my research has been the discovery of energy colors displayed by souls in the spirit world. These colors relate to a soul's state of advancement. This information, gathered slowly over many years, has been one indicator of progress during client assessments and also serves to identify other souls my subjects see around them while in a trance state. I found that typically, pure white denotes a younger soul, and with advancement, soul energy becomes more dense, moving into orange, yellow, green, and finally the blue ranges. In addition to these center core auras, there are subtle mixtures of halo colors within every group that relate to the character aspects of each soul. For want of a better system, I have classified soul development as moving from a level 1 beginner through various learning stages to that of a master at level 6. These greatly advanced souls are seen as having a deep indigo color. I have no doubt even higher levels exist, but my knowledge of them is restricted because I only receive reports from people who are still incarnating. Frankly, I am not fond of the term level to identify soul placement, because this label clouds the diversity of development attained by souls at any particular stage. Despite these misgivings, it is my subjects who use level to describe where they are on the ladder of learning. They are also quite modest about accomplishments.
So, I mean, it's clear. It's a pyramid scheme, just like we have down here. You have the various levels that you can achieve in life, depending on how well you play the game. Are you compliant? Are you going to go along to get along? Or are you going to cause problems and try and be a sovereign being? Don't be sovereign. Not allowed. It's the same exact structure that's going on down here is going on up there. It's so clear. And all I ask anyone who is new to this type of content, just do your research. Spend it, especially if you're new. If you're new, just take the next couple years really dissecting not just past life regressions, but near-death experiences and pre-birth memories. There's so much out there. And you start to see we've been scammed. We've been deceived and manipulated. Moving on.
Regardless of my assessment, no client is inclined to state they are an advanced soul. Once out of hypnosis, with a fully conscious, self-gratifying mind in control, they are less reticent. While in a superconscious state during deep hypnosis, my subjects tell me that in the spirit world, no soul is looked down upon as having less value than any other soul. We are all in a process of transformation to something greater than our current state of enlightenment. Each of us is considered uniquely qualified to make some contribution toward the whole, no matter how hard we are struggling with our lessons. If this were not true, we would not have been created in the first place. In my discussions of colors of advancement, levels of development, classrooms, teachers, and students, it would be easy to assume the ambience of the spirit world as one of hierarchy. This conclusion would be quite wrong, according to all my clients. If anything, the spirit world is hierarchical in mental awareness. We tend to think of organizational authority on Earth as represented by power struggles, turf wars, and the controlling use of a rigid set of rules within structure. There certainly is structure in the spirit world, but it exists within a sublime matrix of compassion, harmony, ethics, and morality, far beyond what we practice on Earth. In my experience, the spirit world also has a far-reaching centralized personnel department for soul assignments. Yet there is a value system here of overwhelming kindness, tolerance, patience, and absolute love. When reporting to me about such things, my subjects are humbled by the process. I have an old college friend in Tucson who is an iconoclast and has resisted authority all his life, which is an attitude I can empathize with myself.
Now, wait till you hear where this goes. I like the fact that Newton had this friend, and he brings this up. Listen.
Friend suspects the souls of my clients have been brainwashed into believing they have control over their destiny. He believes authority of any kind, even spiritual authority, cannot exist without corruption and the abuse of privilege.
Bless his friend. So you see, the friend knows what's up, and even confronted Newton on this point blank, and he is spot on. How great is it that this is in this book? It's right in the face. Right there. This is the truth bomb inside the book.
My research reveals too much order upstairs, which is not to his liking.
I agree.
Nevertheless, all my subjects believe they have had a multitude of choices in their past, and that this will continue into the future.
These are choices rooted in deception and a bevy of systems that we probably cannot even fathom. It's unreal what's going on in these astral subrealms of control. And it is groupthink, kind of like it is down here, left versus right, all these types of, all the thing, NFL, Major League Baseball, hard rock versus the blues, or, you pick it. There's always these choices and boxes that are available for you to be put into, just as long as you are going along for the ride and complying. So his friend is spot on. I would like to just rewind that part one more time because it's a really, really great part of the book.
Iconoclast. And I have an old college friend in Tucson who is an iconoclast and has resisted authority all his life, which is an attitude I can empathize with myself. My friend suspects the souls of my clients have been brainwashed into believing they have control over their destiny. He believes authority of any kind, even spiritual authority, cannot exist without corruption and the abuse of privilege. My research reveals too much order upstairs, which is not to his liking. Nevertheless, all my subjects believe they have had a multitude of choices in their past, and that this will continue into the future. Advancement through the taking of personal responsibility does not involve dominance or status ranking, but rather a recognition of potential. They see integrity and personal freedom everywhere in their life between lives. In the spirit world, we are not forced to reincarnate or participate in group projects. If souls want solitude, they can have it. If they don't want to advance in their assignments, this too is honored. One subject told me, "I have skated through many easy lives, and I like it that way, because I haven't really wanted to work hard. Now that's going to change. My guide says, we are ready when you are." In fact, there is so much free will.
Yeah, tell that to the person who went through 4,000 years just to flush out jealousy out of their system. Yeah, okay. Please.
That if we are not ready to leave Earth's astral plane after death, for a variety of personal reasons, our guides will allow us to stay around until such time as we are prepared to go home. I hope this book will show that we have many choices, both in and out of the spirit world. What is very evident to me about these choices is the intense desire of most souls to prove themselves worthy of the trust placed in them. We are expected to make mistakes in the process. The effort of moving toward a greater goodness and a conjunction with the source that created us.
Where's the greater goodness down here? Huh? I mean, yeah, we have, look, there's love, there's our friendships, there's our family, there is a lot of good. We have nature that's beautiful, but nature that also destroys. We have friends and family that are friendly and loving and also destroy. I mean, we've got it all, okay? But the overarching system that has been present in humanity's history is very clear. Excuse me. And it tells a story. It's not just one thing like this book, Destiny of Souls, or Journey of Souls, or just a near-death experience, or just one. No, it's not one thing. It's a combination of things that present an overarching control system that is here on Earth.
Is the prime motivator of souls. Souls have feelings of humility at having been given the opportunity to incarnate in physical form. I have been asked many times if my subjects see the source of creation during their sessions. In my introduction, I said I could only go so far upriver toward the source because of the limitations of working with people who are still incarnating. Advanced subjects talk about the time of conjunction, when they will join the most sacred ones. In this sphere of dense purple light, there is an all-knowing presence. What all this means, I cannot say. But I do know a presence is felt when we go before our council of elders.
Bing, bing, bing.
Once or twice between lives, we visit this group of higher beings.
Now let me just say my opinion on the council of elders is they are based on the last book and regressions that I've read in the past that weren't even related to Newton, where the council is brought up. It seems to be a different energy frequency that's being emitted, and these council of elders are also extremely hyped up by the soul group you're involved with, as well as the quote-unquote guides or masters that are linked with your soul group or come in and out of your soul group to indoctrinate you. And so these elders are hyped up. They're bordering on gods, okay? That's really it. So as he's kind of saying, there's I think he said it's like a different feeling or vibe or something like that. But I think it's an energy emitting frequency that is placed on the person who goes, quote unquote, before them, their highness.
Are a step or two above our teacher guides. In my first book, I gave a couple of case examples of these meetings. With this book, I will go into greater detail about our visitations with these masters, who are as close as I can come to the Creator. This is because it is here where an even higher source of divine knowledge is experienced by the soul. My clients call this energy force the presence. The council is not a tribunal of judges, nor a courtroom where souls appear to be tried and sentenced for wrongdoing. Although I must admit that once in a while, someone will tell me they feel going in front of the council is like being sent to the principal's office in school. Members of the council want to talk to us about our mistakes and what we can do to correct negative behavior in the next life. This is the place where considerations for the right body in our next life begin. As the time approaches for rebirth, we go to a space where a number of bodies are reviewed that might meet our goals. We have a chance to look into the future here and actually test out different bodies before making a choice. Souls voluntarily select less than perfect bodies and difficult lives to address karmic debts or to work on different aspects of a lesson they have had trouble with in the past. Most souls accept the bodies offered to them in the selection room.
Yeah, see, most accept the bodies selected in the selection room. Ugh. And then you have the karmic hooks that are placed in you. Well, you remember that last lifetime, guys, huh? Well, remember when you were 5 years old and you pulled that blade of grass out of the backyard there? Well, alright, well, this lifetime, since you desecrated the grass blade, we're gonna have to, you're gonna be in a wheelchair. I don't know. I'm going very extreme just for comedy's sake, obviously. But they think about how long you live in a body. Everybody does something screwed up at some point, probably multiple times that they regret. But the karma aspect of things is the reasoning for you to go on down here in your next incarnation in the body and life script processing area, so to say. And in turn, you are going to suffer more than you did the previous lifetime. It's all about suffering. That's most of the drive in these systems. And if they can do it with your consent, that's fine. If not, perhaps maybe you'll get an easier lifetime the next go at it. And then they might convince you otherwise the following. The point is, as long as you keep coming back, that's all that matters. As long as you are staying within the confines of the control system, that's all that matters. They don't care. They'd prefer you to be suffering on a maximum output, so to say, every incarnation, but they probably know they're not going to get away with that. So there's, of course, got to be some negotiations going on.
But a soul can reject what is offered and even delay reincarnating. Then, too, a soul might ask to go to a physical planet other than Earth for a while. If we accept the new assignment, we are often sent to a preparation class to remind us of certain signposts and clues in the life to come, especially at those moments when primary soulmates come into our lives. Finally,
and in the previous book, Journey of Souls, we went over that quite a bit. So if you're interested in hearing about some of the markers and possibilities in life that you may run across that are major, particularly, big turning points in your life, that is discussed in the previous book commentary.
When the time comes for our return, we say a temporary goodbye to our friends and are escorted to the place of embarkation for the trip to Earth. Souls join their assigned hosts in the womb of the baby's mother sometime after the 3rd month of pregnancy, so they will have a sufficiently evolved brain to work with before term. As part of the fetal state, they are still able to think as immortal souls while they get used to brain circuitry in the alter ego of their host. After birth, an amnesiac memory block sets in, and souls meld their immortal character with the temporary human mind to produce a combination of traits for a new personality. I use a systematic approach to reach the soul mind by employing a series of exercises for people in the early stages of hypnotic regression. This procedure is designed to gradually sharpen my subjects' memories of their past and prepare them to analyze critically the images they will see of life in the spirit world. After the usual intake interview, I place the client in hypnosis very quickly. It is the deepening that is my secret. Over long periods of experimentation, I have come to realize that having a client in the normal alpha state of hypnosis is not adequate enough to reach the superconscious state of the soul mind. For this, I must take the subject into the deeper theta ranges of hypnosis. In terms of methodology, I may spend up to an hour with long visualizations of forest or seashore images. Then I take the subject into their childhood years. I ask detailed questions about such things as the furniture in their house at age 12, their favorite article of clothing at age 10, the toy they loved most at age 7, and their earliest memories as a child between ages 3 and 2. We do all this before I take the client down into their mother's womb for more questions, and then into the most immediate past life for a short review. By the time the client has passed through the death scene of that life and reached the gateway to the spirit world, my bridge is complete. Continual hypnosis, deepening over the first hour, enhances the subject's disengagement from their earthly environment. They have also been conditioned to respond in detail to an intensive question and answer interview of their spiritual life. This will take us another 2 hours. Subjects who come out of trance after mentally returning home have a look of awe on their faces that is far more profound than if they had just experienced a straight past life regression. For example, a client told me, "The spirit has a diversity and complex fluid quality beyond my ability adequately to interpret." Many former clients write me about how viewing their immortality changed their lives. Here is a sample of one letter. "I have gained an indescribable sense of joy and freedom from learning my true identity. The amazing thing is that this knowledge was in my mind all the time. Seeing my non-judgmental master teachers left me in a glowing state. The insight that came to me was that the only thing of true importance in this material life is the way we live and how we treat other people. The circumstances of our life mean nothing compared to our compassion and acceptance of others."
Fair enough. Fair enough. Those are important things to do because you have morals and ethics. Okay? You do the right thing because you want to do the right thing because you know it's the right thing to do. Okay? But the systems in place in this realm are designed to continually send you off track, to continually bait and switch you every step of the way, which turns people crazy. It makes people do things they otherwise might not do. Now, of course, there's choice, but there's a lot of the crazy in the world that we see, a lot of the bad things we see that are happening is not just because of the conditions, but there's also these soul groups and life scripts that are involved in the planning process before you get here. So sure, oh, hold on 1 minute. I'm having a recording error. I'm gonna have to just I'm not gonna take a full break, but just bear with me 1 moment. This will just be a quick one. Sorry about that. Ah, what a nightmare. Okay. It's going to be problems for later, but let's continue.
I now have a knowing rather than a feeling about why I am here and where I am going after death. I present my findings involving the 67 cases and numerous quotes in this book as a reporter and a messenger. Before I begin every lecture to the public, I explain to my audiences that what I have to say are my truths about our spiritual life. There are many doorways to the truth. My truths come from accumulation of great wisdom from multitudes of people who have graced my life as clients over many years. If I make statements that go against your preconceptions, faith, or personal philosophy, please take what fits well for you and discard the rest. 2. Death, grief, and comfort. Denial and acceptance. Surviving the loss of a love is one of life's hardest trials. It is well known that the process of grief survival involves going through the initial shock, then coping with denial, anger, depression, and finally arriving at some sort of acceptance. Each one of these stages of emotional turmoil varies in length of time and intensity, from months up to years. Losing someone with whom we had a deep bond can bring such despair that it feels as though we are in a bottomless pit where escape is impossible because death seems so final. In Western society, the belief in the finality of death is an obstacle to healing. We have a dynamic culture where the possibility of our loss of personhood is unthinkable. The dynamics of death in a loving family is akin to a successful stage play that is thrown into disarray due to the loss of one of its stars.
And that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, it's a play. I mean, we're all actors and actresses in this big game of life that we have agreed to come down and play. The problem is how all of this occurred, okay? Now, what he's about to get into is really interesting because it's something I've seen in my research and something in other areas, particularly with death. He's going to talk about how at the time of death, you're the person that passes, a loved one, let's say your mother or father passes. A lot of times they are going to try to communicate with you. Now, depending on how distraught you are, that contact can be difficult to see sometimes, or hear or experience based on where you are at in your head, obviously. But nonetheless, these attempts are made and do occur regularly. There's people all over the world that have talked about this. So he's going to get into that a little bit. It's interesting stuff. So there's some research involved here that I've seen and even experienced. So here we go.
Supporting cast flounders around over the need for script changes. Dealing with this huge hole in the story left by the departed affects the future roles of the remaining players. There is a dichotomy here, because when souls are in the spirit world preparing for a new life, they laugh about being in rehearsals for their next big stage play on Earth. They know all roles are temporary. In our culture, we do not prepare properly for death during life because it is something we cannot fix or change. The apprehension about death begins to gnaw at us as we get older. It is always there, lurking in the shadows, regardless of our beliefs about what happens after death. In discussing life after death on my lecture tours, I was surprised to find that many people who held very traditional religious views seemed to be the most fearful of death. The fear for most of us comes from the unknown. Unless we have had a near-death experience or undergone a past life regression where we remember what death felt like in a former life, death is a mystery. When we must face death, either as a participant or as an observer, it can be painful, sad, and frightening. The healthy don't want to talk about it, and frequently neither do the seriously ill. Thus, our culture views death as an abhorrence. In the 20th century, there were many changes in public attitudes about life after death. During the early decades of the century, most people held traditional views that they had only one life to live. In the last third of the 20th century in the U.S., it was estimated that some 40% believed in reincarnation. This change in attitude has made acceptance of death a little easier for those people who have become more spiritual and are pulling away from a belief in oblivion after life. One of the most meaningful aspects of my work in the spirit world is learning from the perspective of the departed soul what it feels like to die and how souls try to reach back and comfort those left behind. In this chapter, I hope to validate that what you sense deep inside after a loss is not just wishful thinking. The person you love is not really gone. Consider, too, what I said in the last chapter about soul duality. Part of your energy was left behind in the spirit world at the time of incarnation. When your love arrives back home again, you will already be there waiting with that portion of your energy which was left behind. This same energy is held in reserve for unification with the returning soul. One of the significant revelations of my research was to learn that soulmates are never truly apart from each other. The sections that follow illustrate certain methods used by souls to communicate with those they love. These techniques may begin right after physical death and can be very intense. Nevertheless, the departing soul is anxious to get moving on their way home, as the density of earth does drain energy. In death, suddenly the soul is released and given freedom. Yet, if we have the need, souls are able to contact us on a regular basis from the spirit world. Quiet contemplation and meditation should bring a greater receptivity to the departed and provide your consciousness with a heightened sense of awareness. No verbal messages from the other side are necessary. Just removing the blocks of self-doubt and opening your mind to even the possible presence of someone you love will assist the process of grief recovery. Therapeutic techniques of souls. My opening case is that of an advanced soul named Tamano, who is in training to be a student guide. He said to me, "I have been incarnating and dying on Earth for thousands of years, and only in the last few centuries am I really getting the hang of how to alter negative thought patterns and calm people." This case begins at the point in our session where Tamano is describing the moments following his sudden death after a former life. Case 1.
I'm just going to say, for those that have doubts about the information I'm trying to share, and just spread awareness of, I think the biggest question that you should ask yourself first is, do you want to come back here? If you want to come back here, don't even, just disregard what I'm going to say. But if your desire is to leave this system and not reincarnate back here, just give what I'm saying a chance. Do your own investigating. Because right now, in this moment, in this lifetime, this is your opportunity right now. You will be born again through reincarnation with your memory gone of what you learned in this lifetime. Now, you may be able to pick up some bits and pieces here. But the overall agenda at play is to continually get you to reincarnate. And you are allowed selective memories on what you can take back with you into a upcoming incarnation. So, would you rather just kind of err on the side of caution with these things? Because I know if I'm in someone else's shoes and I don't want to come back, I would much rather just say, I'll hear this guy out, or I'll keep looking into it myself for the next couple of years and see if what he's saying is right. Because I'm not trying to push anything on anyone, but what I am trying to do is just put this out there as a seed dropped, and everyone has to make of it what they will. But this really is, in my opinion, the most important thing you can learn while you're living here. Because you are a sovereign being. But as of this moment, in this body, there are limitations. And there are forces beyond here, ready and waiting, leading up to and at the time of death, that are going to try and take advantage of you in an effort to get you back here. That's just everything that I see, and it's not one or two things. It's overwhelming amounts of evidence, brothers and sisters. And I'm begging some of you out there who may be resonating with what I'm saying here today. I know my presentation style is a little wacky. I know I'm a little sarcastic, and I try to put some fun into it, and I mock a lot of the information, but that's my way of kind of coping with the information that I've learned. Now, I know it's not the best style for everyone, and that's fine. I'm not saying you have to stick around or anything, but you can do your own research into this and see it for yourself. All I'm saying is, don't just throw it away and say, oh, well, maybe, this guy's full of shit or this or that. Just do your own research. You can prove it to yourself. And if you don't want to come back here, you got to do it. It'll pay off. I promise. So now let's get into case one and roll here. That's my little speech.
Subject. My wife is not feeling my presence. I'm just not getting through to her at all right now. Dr. N. What is the matter? Subject. Too much grief. It is so overpowering. Alice is in such a state of shock over my being killed that she is too numb to feel my energy. Dr. N. Tamano, has this been a recurring problem for you after your former lives, or is it just Alice? Subject. Right after death, the people who love you are either very agitated or completely numb. In either situation, their minds can shut down. My task is to attempt a balancing of mind and body. Dr. N. Where is your soul at this moment? Subject. On the ceiling of our bedroom. Dr. N. What do you want her to do? Subject. Stop crying and focus her thoughts. She doesn't believe I could still be alive, so all her energy patterns are in a terrible tangled mass. It's so frustrating. I'm right next to her and she doesn't know it. Dr. N. Are you going to give up for the moment and leave for the spirit world because her mind is closed down? Subject. What do you want? That would be the easy way for me, but not for her. I care for her too much to give up now. I won't go until she at least senses that someone is in this room with her. That is my first step. Then I will be able to do more. Dr. N. How long has it been since your death? Subject. A couple of days. The funeral is over, and that is when I settled down to try and comfort Alice. Dr. N. I suppose your own guide is waiting to escort you home? Subject laughs. I have informed my guide Aeon that she would have to wait for me a while, which was unnecessary. She knows all about this. Aeon was the one who taught me. This case demonstrates a common complaint I hear from newly released souls. Many are not as proficient or determined as Tamano. Even so, most souls who are anxious to depart for the spirit world will not leave Earth's astral plane until they take some sort of action to comfort those in distress who care about them. I have condensed this client's narrative of how he assisted Alice in her grief recovery in order to focus on the soothing effects of soul energy patterns on disrupted human energy. Dr. N. Tamano, I would appreciate your taking me through the techniques you use to help your wife Alice with her grief. Subject: Well, I'll start by telling you Alice has not lost me. Takes a deep breath. I begin by throwing out a shower of my energy as an umbrella from Alice's waist to her head. Dr. N: If I were a spirit standing next to you, what would this look like? Subject smiles. A cloud of cotton candy. Dr. N: What does this do? Subject: It gives Alice a blanket of mental warmth, which is calming. I must tell you, I'm not fully proficient with this cloaking yet, but I have placed a protective cloud of energy over Alice the past 3 days since my death to make her more receptive. Dr. N: Oh, I see. You have already begun your work with Alice. Okay, Tamano, what do you do now? Subject: I begin to filter certain aspects of myself through the cloud of energy around her until I can feel the point where there is the least amount of blockage. Pause. I find it on the left side of her head behind her ear. Dr. N: Does this spot have some significance? Subject: Alice used to love to have me kiss her ears. Memories of caressing points are meaningful. When I see the opening on the left side of her head, I convert my energy to a solid beam and train it on that place. Dr. N: Does your wife feel this right away? Subject: Alice is aware of a gentle touch in the beginning, but the awareness is fragmented by grief. Then I increase the power of my beam, sending her thoughts of love. Dr. N: Do you see this working? Subject: Happily. Yes. I detect new energy patterns that are no longer dark coming from Alice. There are shifts in her emotions. Her crying stops. She is looking around, sensing me. She smiles. Now I've got her. Dr. N: Are you finished? Subject: She is going to be all right. It's time for me to go. I'll watch over her, but I know she is going to make it through this. And that's good because I'm going to be busy myself for a while. Dr. N: Does this mean you won't contact Alice further? Subject, offended: Certainly not. I will remain in contact whenever she needs me. She is my love. The average soul is much less skillful than even the most junior of student guides. I will discuss these elements further in Chapter 4, under the sections of energy rehabilitation. Still, most souls I work with perform rather well from the spirit world on a physical body. Typically, they choose to work in concentrated areas, using the beam effect described by Tamano. These loving energy projections can be very potent, even from the inexperienced soul, to people who have sustained emotional and physical trauma. Eastern practices of yoga and meditation include the use of chakra body points in ways that resemble how souls partition the human body with healing energy. People who practice the art of chakra healing say that since we have an etheric body that exists in conjunction with the physical, healing must take into account both these elements. Chakra work includes unblocking our emotional and spiritual energy through various points of the body, from the spine, heart, throat, forehead, and so on, to open and harmonize the body. Ways spirits connect with the living. Somatic touch. I have taken the clinical terms of somatic bridging and therapeutic touch and combined them to describe the method by which discarnate souls use directed energy beams to touch various parts of an incarnated body. Healing is not limited to the chakra body points I spoke about earlier. Souls who are reaching back to comfort the living look for areas that are most receptive to their energy. We saw this in Case 1, behind the left ear. The energy pattern becomes therapeutic when bridges are established to connect the two minds of the sender and receiver in telepathic transmission. Bridging by thought transmissions to a body which is hurting is somatic when the methods are physiological. It involves the subtle touching of body organs while eliciting certain emotional reactions, which can include the use of the senses. Skillfully applied energy beams can evoke recognition by sight, sound, taste, and smell. The whole idea with recognition,
And all of that stuff is you can research after death communication, and you'll find tons of that stuff. Lots of testimonials about that, talking about how people who lost a loved one, and they'll do videos about it. You'll see it when there's even videos about it. You'll see loads of comments about other people who have no vested interest in lying to you. This is a real thing that's happening. I've experienced it as well, and know a number of other people who have. So it's completely real what he's talking about. The method that he's describing seems pretty accurate too, on how they just direct these beams of energy in an effort to get the attention of their loved one who's still in the physical body.
is to convince the person grieving that the individual they love is still alive. The purpose of somatic touch is to allow the grief-stricken person to come to terms with their loss by acquiring an awareness that absence is only a change of reality and not final. Hopefully, this will allow the bereaved to move on and complete their own life constructively. Souls are also quite capable of falling into habit patterns with somatic touch. The next case is an example of a 49-year-old man who had died of cancer. While the soul of this man does not demonstrate much skill, his intentions are good. Case 2. Dr. N. What technique do you use to reach out to your wife? Subject. Oh, my old standby, the center of the chest. Dr. N. Where exactly on the chest? Subject. I direct my energy beam right at the heart. If I'm a little off, it doesn't matter. Dr. N. And why is this method successful for you? Subject. I'm on the ceiling and she is bent over crying. My first shot causes her to straighten up. She sighs deeply and senses something and looks upward. Then I use my scatter technique. Dr. N. What is that? Subject. Smiles. Oh, you know, throwing energy in all directions from a central point on the ceiling. Usually one of those bolts reaches the right place. The head, anywhere. Dr. N. But what determines the right place? Subject. That which is not blocked by negative energy, of course. Compare the difference between Case 2 and the next client who carefully spreads her energy in a focused area as if she was applying icing on a cake. Case 3. Dr. N. Please describe the manner in which you are going to help your husband with your energy. Subject. I'm going to work the base of the head just above the spine. God, Kevin is suffering so much. I just won't leave until he feels better. Dr. N. Why this particular spot? Subject. Because I know he enjoyed having the back of his neck rubbed by me. So it is an area where he is more receptive to my vibrational imprint. Then I play this area as if I was doing body massage, which I am, actually. Dr. N. Play the area? Subject. My subject giggles and holds her hand out in front of her, opening up 5 fingers wide. Yes, I spread my energy and resonate myself by touch. Then I use both hands cupped around each side of Kevin's head for maximum effect. Dr. N. Does he know it is you? Subject, with a wicked smile. Oh, he realizes it must be me all right. No one else can do what I do to him, and it only takes me a minute. Dr. N. Isn't he going to miss this after you return to the spirit world? Subject. I thought you knew about such things. I can come back whenever he really gets down in the dumps and yearns for me. Dr. N. Just asking. I don't...
Now, these moments that occur after the death of a loved one, very prominent, and they also will occur in other times of trauma. So, say someone gets in a really bad car accident, gets badly injured, is extremely depressed, bordering on wanting to kill themselves or something, that's when these things really seem to pop up. High levels of anxiety and fear. Those are kind of the more prominent times that we see these things happening. And lots of testimony on that too, outside of this book.
I mean to be insensitive. But what if Kevin eventually meets another woman in this life? Subject: I'll be delighted if he finds happiness again. That is a testimony as to how good we were together. Our life with each other, every scene is never lost, and can be recaptured and played again in the spirit world. Just about the time I think I am getting a complete grasp of soul capabilities and their limitations, a client will come along to dispel these faulty notions. For a long while, I told people that all souls seem to have difficulties getting past the uncontrolled sobs of the grieving before they could go to work with healing energy. Here is a short quote from a level 3 whose tactical approach during the peak of the grief process proved me wrong. I am not delayed by people who are crying hard. My technique is to coordinate my vibrational resonance with the tonal variations of their vocal cords and then springboard to the brain. In this way, I can align my energy to effect a more rapid melding of my essence with their body. Quite soon, they stop crying without knowing why. Personification with objects. I have heard some fascinating stories about the use of familiar objects, such as with the man in my next case. Since husbands usually die ahead of their wives, I do hear more about energy techniques from their perspective. This does not mean male-oriented souls are more proficient with healing because they get more practice at comforting. The soul in Case 4 has been just as effective in former lives, as a woman who preceded her husband in death, as a husband in this life. Case 4. Dr. N. What do you do if your efforts right after death are not having the desired results anywhere on the body? Subject: When I found that my wife Helen was not receiving me by a direct approach, I finally resorted to working with a household familiar. Dr. N. You mean with an animal? A cat or dog? Subject: I have used them before, but no, not this time. I decided to pick out some object of value to me that my wife would know was very personal. I chose my ring. At this point, my subject explained to me that during this past life, he always wore a large ring of Indian design with a raised turquoise stone in the center. He and his wife often sat by the fire talking about their day. He had a habit of rubbing the stone while talking to Helen. His wife often kidded him about polishing the turquoise down to the metal base of the ring. Helen had once reminded him that she had noticed this nervous mannerism the night they met. Dr. N. I think I understand about the ring. So what did you do with it as a spirit? Subject: When I work with objects and people, I have to wait until the scene is very tranquil. 3 weeks after my death, Helen lit a fire and was looking into it with tears in her eyes. I began by wrapping my energy within the fire itself, using the fire as a conduit of warmth and elasticity. Dr. N. Excuse my interruption, but what does elasticity mean? Subject: It took me centuries to learn this. Elastic energy is fluid. To make my soul energy fluid requires intense concentration and practice, because it must be thin and fleecy. The fire serves as a catalyst in this maneuver. Dr. N. Which is just the opposite from a strong, narrow beam of energy. Subject: Exactly. I can be very effective by rapidly shifting my energy from a fluid to a solid state and back again. The shifting is subtle, but it awakens the human mind. Note: Others have also told me this technique of energy shape-shifting tickles the human brain. Dr. N. Interesting. Please continue. Subject: Helen was connecting with the fire and thus with me. For a moment, the grief was less oppressive, and I moved straight into the top of her head. She felt my presence. Slightly. It was not enough. Then I began shifting my energy, as I told you, from hard to soft, in fork fashion. Dr. N. What do you do when you fork energy? Subject: I split it. While keeping a soft, fluid energy on Helen's head to maintain contact, I fork a hard beam at the box which holds my ring in a table drawer. My intent is to open up a smooth pathway from her mind to the ring. This is why I am using a hard, steady beam to direct her to the ring. Dr. N: What does Helen do next? Subject: With my guidance, she slowly gets up without knowing why. She moves as if sleepwalking to the table and hesitates. Then she opens the drawer. Since my ring is in the box, I continue to shift back and forth from her mind to the lid of the box. Helen opens it and takes out my ring, holding it in her left hand. With a deep sigh, then I know I have her. Dr. N: Because? Subject: Because the ring still retains some of my energy. Don't you see? She is feeling my energy on both ends of the fork. This is a two-directional signal, very effective. Dr. N: Oh, I do see. Then what do you do with Helen? Subject: Now I move into overdrive with a full power bridge between myself standing on her right side and the ring on the left. She turns in my direction and smiles. Helen then kisses my ring and says, "Thanks, darling. I know you are with me now. I'll try and be more brave." I want to encourage anyone who is in a terrible state of grief over the loss of a love to do what the gifted psychics do when they want to find missing persons. Take a piece of jewelry, an article of clothing, anything that belonged to the departed person, and hold it for a while in a mutually familiar place, and quietly open your mind, while blanking out all other irrelevant thoughts. Before leaving this section, I want to relate my favorite story about energy contact through objects from a discarnate being. My wife Peggy is an oncology nurse with a graduate degree in counseling, so she involves herself a great deal with grieving cancer patients and their families. Because she administers chemotherapy at a hospital, this puts her in touch with hospice personnel. A few of these women and my wife are close friends who meet regularly as a support group. One of the members of the group is a recent widow whose husband, Clay, died of cancer. Clay loved big band dancing, and he and his wife would often go on road trips to where the best bands were playing. One night after Clay's death, his widow, my wife, and the rest of the support group were in a circle in the middle of this lady's living room floor, talking about my theories of how souls reach back to comfort the people they love. The widow exclaimed in frustration, "Why hasn't Clay made himself known in a way that would comfort me?" There was a moment of silence, and suddenly a music box on top of a bookshelf began to play Glenn Miller's song, "In the Mood." From what I understand, there was a stunned silence followed by nervous laughter from the group. All the widow could say was, "That music box hasn't been touched in 2 years." It didn't matter. I think she got Clay's message. Light energy has some properties of electromagnetic force, and thus can work in mysterious ways with objects. Joanne and Jim are 2 former clients of mine whose marriage is a very close one. After their sessions, we got into a discussion of the use of energy beams by the living. Sheepishly, they told me they combine their energy on the California freeways to push cars out of the fast lane in front of them when they are in a hurry. When I asked if they tailgate, they said, "No, we just direct a combined beam to the back of the driver's head and then fork the beam to the right, middle lane, and back again." They claim that over 50% of the time they are successful. I told Joanne and Jim, half seriously, that pushing cars out of their way was clearly a misuse of power, and they had better mend their ways. I think they both know that using their gift more constructively will be much better received upstairs, although it will be a hard habit to break. Dream recognition. One of the primary ways the newly departed soul uses to reach people who love them is through the dream state. The grief that has overwhelmed the conscious mind is temporarily pushed out of a frontal position in our thoughts when we are asleep. Even if we are in a fitful state of sleep, the unconscious mind is now more open for reception. Unfortunately, The person who is grieving will all too often wake up from a dream that could have contained a message and allow it to slip away from memory without writing anything down. Either the images and symbols they saw while asleep didn't mean anything at the time, or the dream sequence was chalked off as wishful thinking if, for example, the dreamers saw themselves with the deceased. Before proceeding further, I want to offer an assessment about the general nature of dreams.
Okay, and before he goes into the dream segment, I meant to add something towards the end of the segment where we just kind of finished here. There's also he was talking about an instance, that one case with the woman with the ring and then the fire by the fire, things like that. All sorts of different items, including animals, birds, all sorts of different things can come and be present after a loved one passes, and it will be usually extremely obvious, and you'll know deep within you that it's them, quote unquote, them communicating with you after they've crossed over. For instance, I have an example of this I can give. There was someone in my family not that long ago, actually she passed away last year, or beginning of last year, late, yeah. Anyways, she was young, she was 21 years old, ended up getting a rare disease. Anyways, after she passed, there was a pizza restaurant we were at, and it was the morning of her passing. We had just gotten the phone call, and we went out to lunch, sat down and ordered a pizza, and we were sitting at a table in front of a window, and a cardinal came up the moment we sat down, and it was like dancing and back and forth and just chirping up a storm, and would not leave the windowsill. It was at the windowsill the entire time we were there, just causing all this commotion. There's no doubt in my mind that it was that. It was her. It was interpreted as her. And so I just thought I'd share that. Cardinals, for some reason, I looked up later on, they're apparently it's a big one. A lot of people see them at the time shortly after someone passes. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I wouldn't. Someone says she's reincarnated as a bird. No, I think the energy is transferred to the bird in some fashion. She couldn't have possibly been reincarnated as a grown cardinal within a few hours. So no, that was a question. Was she reincarnated as a bird? No. I mean, unless there was some soul transfer thing. No, I think it was excuse me, similar to what was discussed, what we were, with what we were just listening to, and how these energies are beamed down, in this case with the cardinal. I mean, that's the best way I can put it. So
my professional experience with dreams stems from listening to subjects in hypnosis explain how, as discarnates, they use the dream state to reach the living. Spirits are very selective in their use of our dream sequences. I have come to the conclusion that most dreams are not profound. In reviewing various texts about dreaming, I find even specialists in the field believe many dreams during the night are simply jumbled-up absurdities caused by our circuits being on overload throughout the day. If the mind is venting during certain sleep cycles, then the nerve transmissions across our synaptic clefts are letting off steam to relax the brain. I classify dreams in 3 ways, and one of them is the cleaning house state. At times in the night, many stray thoughts from the day are scrambled and swept out of the mind as gobbledygook. We can't make sense of it because there is none. On the other hand, we all know there is a more cognitive side to dreaming. I divide this state into two parts, problem-solving and spiritual, with only a fine line between them. There are people who have been given a premonition about some future event as an outgrowth of dreams. Our state of mind may be altered by dreams. One of the most stressful periods of our lives occurs during the period of mourning, when the affections of someone we love are taken away from us, we think forever. About the only relief we get from oppressive grief is during sleep. We go to bed with anguish and wake up with the pain still there. Yet there is enigma in between. Some mornings bring us a better idea of the initial steps to take toward coping with our loss. Problem-solving through dream sequences is a process of mental incubation which has been called procedural because images appear that teach us ways to move forward. Does this insight come from somewhere other than ourselves? If the dream spills over into the spirit mode, then the dream weavers have probably paid us a call as prompters to assist us through our emotional distress. Spiritual dreams involve our guides, teaching souls, and soulmates who come as messengers to assist us with solutions. We do not need to be grieving to receive help in this way. Into this spiritual...
To assist us with solutions. Now, I want to add that it's really an interesting topic, the after-death communication and how this all works. I have very mixed feelings on it. In one sense, I want to say that yes, these communications are absolutely real. They're coming from the person who's just deceased, and then part of me wonders, is it like this? How do you put it? Is it a projection of the relationship that you had with the person being sent back at you, but also with something to do with what people like to refer to as the Akashic records or Akashic records or the ether, things like that, where this information is stored and also implemented with this? Or it's just quite possibly authentic in those moments, particularly in after-death communication. Or I don't know. I think that's the best way to put it. It's something that really gets me thinking, because it would make sense even if it was legitimately the person, because they're in your soul group, right? They're part of the game. They just left. You know, later on is very, very questionable. At the time of death, extremely there's no doubt at the time of death there's some screwed up things going on, and it's rooted in deception. Now, those spirits and souls involved in all of this, doesn't matter whether it's after they just died or when you are on your deathbed and they have already passed long before this, they're still in your soul group. They're still playing the game. And they're still under an indoctrination program. That's the best way you can really put it. So there could, in some sense, be many real experiences, and then there could be others where they are flat out deceptive projections based on some of your experiences with this person while they were here. The ones at the time of death are extremely revealing. The stuff that goes on there. And in these periods, it's such a touchy moment because a person, just died. Okay, it's a really touchy moment for everyone involved, who's still in the physical, of course, and there's obviously a desire to, from the other side, from the person that passed, to comfort the person. But something really rotten going on too there. And I can't quite put my finger on exactly where authenticity begins and deception begins. There's two very distinct areas there that we won't know the answer to. The point is, no matter what, at the time of death, these things cannot be acknowledged. They have to be denied, and you have to assert your sovereignty. I think that's really the bottom line. So we're never really going to know fully everything that's going on there. But part of me wants to say there's something with the ether. I'll also add one more thing to this. At the time of death, a lot of people who, even and near-death experiences, actually. Near-death experiences and deathbed visitations, okay? These two topics. What you see a lot in people's experiences that they share, they will mention that the deceased loved one that appears to them and is in their presence, okay, is beautiful. They're young, they're vibrant, they're their old self. They're nothing, they're almost never like they were when you last saw them, like when they were dying or when they were older. They always look very young and healthy, and just everything's great about them. So what the hell is that all about? What the hell is that all about? It's either way, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it.
Dream mixture, we also have memory recall of our experiences on other physical and mental worlds, including the spirit world. How many of you have dreamed that you could fly or swim easily underwater? I have found with some clients that these mythic memories contain information about the lives they led as intelligent flying or water creatures on other planets. Frequently, these kinds of dream sequences provide us with metaphoric clues which open the door to comparisons of former lives with our current one. Our immortal soul character does not change much between host bodies, so these comparisons are not all that bizarre. Some of our greatest revelations come from the episodic dreams of events, places, and behavior patterns emanating from experiences before we acquired our present body. In Chapter 1, I briefly touched on the preparation class we attend in the spirit world before returning to a new life. This soul exercise is covered more thoroughly in my first book.
Yes, the preparation class. We're familiar with those. And we did go, like he said, it was in his first book, and we went into a lot of detail about those. So just to rewind here, it's a really important thing to remember that these classes are part of the system. They're part of the Reincarnation Soul Trap to further indoctrinate you. That's really the thing. Keep you in line. Prevent you from declaring your sovereignty and doing your own thing.
Places and behavior patterns emanating from experiences before we acquired our present body. In Chapter 1, I briefly touched on the preparation class we attend in the spirit world before returning to a new life. This soul exercise is covered more thoroughly in my first book, but I mention it here because this experience is relevant to our dreams. The class is designated for recognition of future people and events. While we prepare to incarnate, a teacher reinforces the important aspects of our new life contract. Meeting and interacting with souls from our group and other clusters who are to share parts of our new life.
Reinforces. Reinforces. Hear that word?
Form an integral part of the class. Memories of this prep class might well be triggered in our dreams to light a lamp in the darkness of despair, particularly when a primary soulmate is lost in life. Jung said, "Dreams embody suppressed wishes and fears, but may also give expression to inescapable truths, which are not illusions or wild fantasies. Sometimes these truths are couched in metaphoric puzzles and represented as archetypal images during our dreams. Dream symbols are culturally generalized, and dream glossaries are not immune to this prejudice. Each person should use their own intuition to delineate the meaning of a dream. The Australian Aborigines, a culture with over 10,000 years of unbroken history, believe that dream time is actually real time in terms of objective reality. A dream perception is often as real as an awake experience. To souls in the spirit world, time is always in the present, so regardless of how long they have been physically gone from your life, the person you love wants you to be aware that they are still in now reality. How does a loving spirit go about helping you gain insight and acceptance of these things in your dreams? Case 5. My subject in this case has just died of pneumonia in New York City in 1935. She was a young woman in her early 30s who came to New York after growing up in a small Midwestern town. Sylvia's death was sudden, and she wanted to provide some comfort to her widowed mother. Dr. N. Do you leave immediately for the spirit world after death? Subject. No, I do not. I must say goodbye to my mother, so I want to stay around Earth for a while until she gets the news. Dr. N. Is there anyone else you care to see before going to your mother? Subject. With hesitation, then in a husky voice. Yes, I have an old boyfriend. His name is Phil. I go to his house first. Dr. N. Gently. I see. Were you in love with Phil? Subject. Pause. Yes, but we never married. I just want to touch him once more. I don't really make contact with him because he is sound asleep and not dreaming. I can't stay long because I want to reach my mother before she hears the news about me. Dr. N. Aren't you being a little too rushed with Phil? Why don't you wait for a proper dream cycle and leave a message? Subject, firmly. Phil hasn't been a part of my life for years. I gave myself to him when we were both young. He hardly thinks about me anymore, and, well, to pick up on me through a dream, he could miss the message anyway. My leaving traces of my energy is enough for now because we will be together again in the spirit world. Dr. N. After leaving Phil, do you go to your mother? Subject. Yes. I begin with more conventional thought communication while she is awake, but I am getting nowhere. She is so sad. My mother's grief at not being at my bedside is overpowering her. Dr. N. What methods have you tried so far? Subject. I project my thoughts with an orange-yellow light, like the flame of a candle, and place my light around her head, sending loving thoughts. I'm not effective. She doesn't realize I am with her. I am going for a dream. Dr. N. All right, Sylvia. Take me through this slowly. Please start by telling me if you pick out one of your mother's dreams, or if you can create one of your own. Subject. I don't create dreams well yet. It is much easier for me to take one of hers so I can enter the dream to effect a more natural contact, and then participate. I want her to know it is clearly me in the dream. Dr. N. Fine. Now take me through this process with you. Subject. The first couple of dreams are unsuitable. One is a muddle of absurdity. Another is a past life fragment, but without me in it. Finally, she has a dream where she is walking alone in the fields around my house. You should know she has no grief in this dream. I am not dead yet. Dr. N. What good is this dream, Sylvia, if you are not in it? Subject, laughing at me. Listen, aren't you seeing? I'm going to smoothly place myself in the dream. Dr. N, you can alter the sequence of the dream to include yourself? Subject, sure. I enter the dream from the other end of the field by matching my energy patterns to my mother's thoughts. I project an image of myself as I was the last time she saw me. I come slowly across the
I project an image.
field to let her get used to my presence. I wave and smile and then come to her. We hug each other, and now I send waves of rejuvenating energy into her sleeping body. Dr. N, and what will this do for your mother? Subject, this picture is raised to a higher level of consciousness for my mother. I want to ensure the dream will stay with her after she wakes up. Dr. N, how can you be sure she won't think this is all a projection of her desire for you and discount the dream as not being real?
Okay, I'll rewind that part just a little bit, just because I cut it off. The dreams are obviously another big one, where you dream of a deceased loved one that just passed, or again, I can go back to what we were just saying about deathbed visitations. They're the same things. You have dreams, or deathbed premonitions. I apologize, premonitions. Okay, and visitations in dreams of loved ones who are already deceased. Remember, they are always only people who have already deceased that appear. That's the way these things work with at least near-death experiences, deathbed visions, visitations, premonitions, and dreams. Okay, for at least the loved ones. Dreams, I guess we can say no. Dreams, I should take that back. No, in dreams you can also experience people that are alive. But I guess we'll lump the topics in that I mentioned and how these dreams are gauged for you to remember them. And they're very meaningful, powerful dreams, and a person who comes out of these will often say, just like in a near-death experience, it's the most real experience, one of the most real experiences they can remember. Near-death experience, people will say, it's the most real of real, more real than anything that's ever been felt while in the physical. And these are memories. We can even say they're implanted. And that word was even used earlier on, not that long ago in this book. So they're key moments that stick with a person when they are usually in dire straits, whether on their deathbed, leading up to death, or after losing a loved one.
Subject, the influence of a vivid dream like this is very great. When my mother wakes up, her mind has a vivid impression of this landscape with me and suspects I am with her. In time, the memory is so real she is sure of it. Dr. N, Sylvia, does the image of the dream move from the unconscious to a conscious reality because of your energy transfer? Subject, yes. It is a filtering process where I continue to send waves of energy into her over the next few days until she begins to accept my passing. I want her to believe I am still part of her and always will be. Turning back to Phil's sleep state, it was evident Sylvia did not intend to stay long to manifest her feelings within his unconscious mind. Dreams do not appear to occur in the deep delta stages of brainwave activity, where there is no rapid eye movement. REM sleep, also known as paradoxical sleep, is a much lighter and therefore more active dream state, occurring mostly in the early and late stages of sleep. In my next case, the dreamer will be reached between dreams, presumably because he is still in REM sleep. The dream weaver souls I have come in contact with all engage in dream implanting, with two prominent differences.
Dream implanting.
1. Dream alteration. Here,
Dream alteration.
a skillful discarnate enters the mind of a sleeper and partially alters an existing dream already in progress.
Now you see, just the mere fact that that capability exists is wild, okay? It's not surprising, but it's wild. And you can see how if you have such a dream or experience, it can be very impactful on you and help further egg you along in submitting to the system. I know it's a big thing to say when we're talking about something like this, but it's really about the collective of everything, because again, it's not just based on one thing here. It's on a lot of things. A lot of different categories of this manipulation are being perpetrated on people. Doesn't mean that it wasn't important for the person at the time and that it helped them. Okay, it helps people tremendously in these moments. But I heavily suspect there's a reason for all this happening. There's a reason. And it's just to keep you coming back. It really is. It's to keep you hooked in the system. You have that relationship with that person. You see that person when you die. Okay, you most likely will see that person at the time of death, or as you die, to cross over. Okay, I'm sorry, leading up to and at the time of death. It's very likely, if it's someone really important in your life, they are going to be there to greet you and try and pull you over on into the light, on into the life review. And then you are reunited with your soul group. And as we saw at the beginning of all this, there was a big party. Big party. Togas and whatever the heck else they said. I don't know. The Roman buildings. I don't recall exactly off the top of my head. Something like that. And in near-death experiences, not to veer off track too much, but in near-death experiences, you see quite a lot where people go to the life review and they feel like they're in a 300. First off, they have 360-degree vision, but they also, a lot of people say, they feel like they're in a stadium and the stadium is packed. And they are the center of the show, walking into the stadium and being cheered on. Yeah, rah, rah, being encouraged. Now, looking at it on its face, that sounds great. Oh, yeah, you're about to cross over. Here's your life review, cheering you on. You made it, blah, blah, blah. But when you realize there's a deception involved, well, then it isn't so much fun, is it? So, just food for thought.
This technique I would call one of interlineation, where spirits place themselves as actors between the lines of an unfolding play, so the dreamer is not aware of script tampering with the sequences. This is what Sylvia was doing with her mother.
Not aware of script tampering. Hear that again.
Interlineation, where spirits place themselves as actors between the lines of an unfolding play, so the dreamer is not aware of script tampering with the sequences. This is what Sylvia was doing with her mother.
You hear that? Crazy. One more time.
This technique I would call one of interlineation, where spirits place themselves as actors between the lines of an unfolding play, so the dreamer is not aware of script tampering with the sequences. This is what Sylvia was doing with her mother.
Not aware. Lovely, isn't it?
She was waiting for the right sort of ongoing dream to enter and initiate a smooth fit. As difficult as this approach seems, It is evident to me the second procedure is more complex. 2. Dream origination. In these cases, the soul must create and fully implant a new dream from scratch and weave the tapestry of these images into a meaningful presentation to suit their purpose.
You're hearing all this, right? It's unreal.
Creating or altering scenes in the mind of a dreamer is intended to convey a message. I see this as an act of service and love.
Oh, boy.
If the dream
Here we go. Here we go. All right. All right. All right. It's all about love. All about love. It's about deception. That's what it's about. It's deception in our face. Where's the consent in this? The problem is one is in the astral and one is still in the body, already living out the semi-predestined, destined script. All right? There was consent already made to be here on Earth and go along with the show. That's the difference.
Implantation is not performed skillfully to make the dream meaningful, the sleeper moves on and wakes up in the morning, remembering only disjointed fragments, or nothing at all about the dream. To illustrate the therapeutic use of dream origination, I will cite the case of a level 5 subject whose name was Bud in his last life. Bud was killed in a 1942 battle during World War II. The case involves a dreamer called Walt, who was Bud's surviving brother. Bud is adept at dream weaving, so after his battlefield death, he returned home to the spirit world and made preparations for an effective method to comfort Walt. This is one of those cases that gave me greater perspective of the subtle integration methods dreamweaver souls are able to use with sleeping people. During this condensed case, my subject will describe the dream techniques taught to him by his guide, Axinar. Case 6. Dr. N. How do you plan to alleviate your brother's grief after returning to the spirit world? Subject. Axinar has been working with me on an effective strategy. It's very delicate because we are with Walt's duplicate. Dr. N. You mean that dual part of Walt's energy mass that remained behind during his incarnation to Earth? Subject. Yes, Walt and I are in the same soul group. I begin by connecting myself to his divided nature here to more closely communicate with Walt's light on Earth. Dr. N. Okay.
All right. There's a lot there, and I'm just going to have to rewind it. Divided nature, fragmented, basically, which I think anyone who's pretty much spiritually aware can pick up on this, that we are fragmented. There is no doubt about it. When we are in a body, we have limited access to our true essence, and that is by design. And the brain and the body are the governor of our experience to prevent us from finding our true self. So let me just rewind this just a little bit, because I think it's important to hear again.
Remained behind during his incarnation to Earth? Subject. Yes, Walt and I are in the same soul group. I begin by connecting myself to his divided nature here to more closely communicate with Walt's light on Earth.
Divided nature.
Dr. N. Please explain this procedure. Subject. I float next to the cache where his remaining energy is anchored and meld with it briefly. This allows for a perfect recording of Walt's energy imprint.
You hear that? So this being is nestling up to the true energy of the person on Earth and manipulating it. Okay? I know I'm rewinding a few things here and there, but these are really, really important points that need to just be heard. That's all. So I'm not trying to be annoying or anything, but for anyone new, it's really important just to hear and read between the lines with what's being said here.
There is already float next to the... Please explain this procedure. Subject: I float next to the cache where his remaining energy is anchored and meld with it briefly. This allows for a perfect recording of Walt's energy imprint. There is already a telepathic bonding between us, but I want to have a tighter vibrational alliance when I reach his bedside. Dr. N: Why do you wish to carry an absolutely accurate print of Walt's energy pattern with you on your return to Earth? Subject: For a stronger connection to the dreams I will create. Dr. N: But why can't Walt's other half communicate with himself on Earth instead of you?
Exactly.
Subject, sharply: This does not work well. It is nothing more than talking to oneself. There is no impact, especially during sleep. It's a...
Now, you know, and I like how Newton emphasizes there sharp. You can tell that the response was bordering on anger, right? I mean, that's pretty telling. It's like you're confronting the scam. He's asking about it. He's not calling it a scam, obviously, but he's confronting it and saying, why don't you just do it this way? No, and gets upset.
Rush out. Dr. N: All right. Since Walt's exact energy print is with you, what happens when you go to his sleeping body? Subject: He is tossing and turning at night and really suffering a lot over my being killed. Axanar trained me to work between dreams because he does these energy transfers so well himself. Dr. N:
Axanar. So we got a little helper involved too. Isn't that interesting? Got a little helper involved. Sorry, gotta rewind this one too.
When you go to his sleeping body. Subject: He is tossing and turning at night and really suffering a lot over my being killed. Axanar trained me to work between dreams because he does these energy transfers so well himself. Dr. N: You work between dreams? Subject: Yes, so I can leave messages on either side of two different dreams and then link them for greater receptivity. Because I have Walt's exact energy imprint, I slip into his mind quite easily to deploy my energy. After my visit, a third dream about the first two unfolds as a delayed reaction, and Walt sees us together again in an out-of-body setting, which he won't recognize as the spirit world, but the activation of these inviting memories will sustain him. Note: Some cultures, such as the Tibetan mystics, believe they do recognize the spirit world as an almost physical paradise, to be a natural part of dreaming. Dr. N: What were the dreams you created? Subject: Walt was 3 years older, yet we played a lot together as boys. This changed when he was 13, not because we weren't still close as brothers. He just became attached to guys his own age, and I was excluded. One day, Walt and his friends were swinging on a rope tied over the branch of a big high tree above a pond near our farm. I was nearby watching. The other boys went first and were engaged in a water fight when Walt swung too high and hit his head hard on another branch and was almost knocked out as he fell into the water. They did not see him fall. I dove into the pond and held up his head, screaming for help. Later, on the bank, Walt looked up at me with a dazed expression and said, "Thanks for saving me, buddy." I thought this act would admit me to their club, but a few weeks afterwards, Walt and his friends would not let me play a game of softball with them. I felt betrayed that Walt would not stand up for us. During the game, the ball was hit into some bushes and they couldn't locate it. That evening, I found their ball and hid it inside our barn. We were poor kids, and this ruined their game for a while until one of the boys got another ball on his birthday. Dr. N: Tell me the message you wanted to convey to Walt. Subject: To show two things. I wanted my brother to see me crying and holding his bleeding head in my lap on the bank of the pond, and remember what we said to each other after he stopped choking. The second dream about the softball game ended when I added a trailer to the dream and took him to the barn where the softball was still hidden. I told Walt I forgave him for every slight in our lives together. I want him to know I am...
Do you know what I hear in this one? And I wonder if anyone here would agree. It seems very, very similar to the life review. Very, very similar. These major events in life. You have the bad event, and then you have the redemption event, where you are faced with something bad you did at one point in your life, in a near-death experience life review, and then you also experience the good, the forgiving, and what happens at deathbed visitations. The same shit. It's the same type of stuff. I read a guy, again, I don't want to veer off track too much, but it's important to put these out there because there are comparisons that can be made across all these topics. And that's you got to mold it together and see that there's major commonalities going on. So, in a near-death experience, very quickly, there was a soldier who felt extreme guilt through his whole life from when I think he was 18 or 19 or something. He was serving in Vietnam, and he wasn't covering one of the soldiers in his platoon properly, and the guy ended up dying, and he felt that guilt his whole life. Well, guess what? On the deathbed visitation, guess who shows up? Well, it's that soldier who he was responsible for, who died, and because he wasn't covering him, he died. Sorry, I'm kind of mixing it up there. Anyways, so the soldier pops up and says, "Hey, we're gonna go through this moment." He ends up transferring the guy who's on the deathbed to a moment when it was happening, and the guy had to experience what the soldier who died experienced. Okay, went through that. So and the person said, "Oh, it was awful," but he also said that then there was this next visit that was discussed or brought up, and that visit was the visit of forgiveness, and that everything's okay, and that your time is almost near. That's just what this being said. This entity said, your time is almost near. So can you see how sick that is? I hope I explained it right. I explained it the best I could. So yeah, soldier is responsible for not covering one of his other soldiers in the platoon, carries the guilt through his entire life. Then when the guy is dying, the deceased soldier appears, has the guy who's on the deathbed relive that moment of horror through the dead soldier's eyes, the moment he got shot, and the moment that all this guilt came in and held over for his entire life, and then boom, next visit, which I think was the very next day or later on that day, and all is forgiven, and that person, that entity was the one responsible to carry them over, and said, "You got to come with us. When you're about to die. You're on your way out. You got to come with us." And the person was so relieved. He held this weight his entire life, but boom, there you go. Deception right there. Shows it. Look, it helped the person in that moment, but the reasoning behind it even existing is just appalling.
Always with him, and the devotion we have for each other can't die. He will know this when he returns to the old barn to look for the ball. Dr. N, does Walt need to dream again about all this after your visit? Subject laughs. It's not necessary as long as he recalled the location of the ball after he woke. Walt did remember what I had implanted. Going back to our old barn and finding the ball made the message come together. This gave Walt some serenity about my death. Dream symbolism moves on many levels in the mind, some of which are abstract while others are emotional. The dreams of this case, involving experiential imagery, reinforced poignant memories of two brothers in a slice of recorded time. Future unification was pictured for Walt in a third, rather wispy dream of both souls happily together once again in the spirit world. It took me quite a long while before I found an advanced subject apprenticed to a dream master, a title I feel is appropriate for Axanar in Case 6. As with any spiritual technique, some souls show more inclination than others toward acquiring advanced skills. In Case 6, Bud not only originated a sequence of dreams in Walt's mind, but then engaged in the more complex technique of linking them into a central theme of love and support for his brother. Finally, Bud provided physical evidence that he was there through the use of a hidden baseball. I take nothing away from Sylvia in Case 5, because she was very effective entering her mother's dream to give her peace without disruption to the dreamer. It's just that Case 6 demonstrated more spiritual artistry.
Artistry?
Transference through
Spiritual artistry. He's really going to say that when he flat out said we had manipulation involved. Come on.
children. When souls have difficulty reaching the mind of a troubled adult, they might resort to using children as conduits for their messages. Children are more receptive to spirits because they have not been conditioned to doubt or resist the supernatural.
This is a big one, too. I'll tell you a story later on about this.
Frequently, the young person chosen as a conduit is a family member of the departed. This situation is helpful to the spirit who is trying to reach a surviving relative, especially in the same household. The next case is that of a man who died of a heart attack in his backyard at age 42. Case 7. Dr. N. What do you do to comfort your wife at the moment of death? Subject. At first I try to hug Irene with my energy, but I don't have the hang of it yet. Subject is a level 2. I can relate to her sorrow, but nothing I'm doing is working. I'm worried because I don't want to leave without saying goodbye. Dr. N. Just relax now and move slowly forward. I want you to explain to me how you work through this dilemma. Subject. I soon realized that I ought to be able to console Irene a little by reaching her through Sarah, our 10-year-old. Dr. N. Why do you think Sarah might be receptive to you? Subject. My daughter and I have a special bond. She also has great sorrow over my passing, but much of this is mixed with fear over what happened to me so suddenly. Sarah doesn't comprehend it all yet. There are too many neighbors crowding around trying to sustain my wife. No one is paying much attention to Sarah, sitting alone in our bedroom. Dr. N. Do you look upon this as an opportunity? Subject. Yes, I do. In fact, Sarah senses I am still alive, and so she is more open to accepting my vibrations as I move into the bedroom. Dr. N. Good. What happens next between you and your daughter? Subject takes a deep breath. I've got it. Sarah is holding a set of her mother's knitting needles. I send warmth through them into her hands, and she feels this right away. Then I use the needles as a springboard to reach her spine at the base of the neck and work around to her chin. Subject stops and begins laughing. Dr. N. What is making you happy? Subject. Sarah is giggling because I'm tickling her chin like I did before she went to sleep every night. Dr. N. Now what do you do? Subject. The crowd is breaking up and leaving because I have been taken out to the street and placed into an ambulance. Irene comes alone into the bedroom and gets ready for a neighbor who will drive her to the hospital. She also wants to check on our daughter. Sarah looks up at my wife and says, Mommy, you don't have to leave. Daddy is here with me. I know because I can feel him tickling my chin. Dr. N. And then what does your wife do? Subject. Irene is tearful but not crying as hard as before because she doesn't want to scare Sarah. So she hugs our daughter. Dr. N. Irene does not want to indulge in what she believes to be Sarah's fantasy about your being with her? Subject. Not yet. But I'm ready for Irene now. As soon as my wife holds our daughter, I jump the gap between them, sending energy flowing over both. Irene feels me too, although not as much as Sarah. They sit down on the bed and hold on to each other with their eyes closed. For a while, all three of us are alone together. Dr. N, do you feel you have accomplished what you set out to do on this day? Subject, yes, it's enough. It is time for me to leave, and I pull back away from them and float out of the house. Then I am high over the countryside and sucked up into the sky. Soon I move into bright light, where my guide
I was sucked up into the sky and moved to the bright light with the guide and
comes to meet me. Contact the sky, out of the house. It's enough. It is time for me to leave, and I pull back away from them and float out of the house. Then I am high over the countryside and sucked up into the sky. Soon I move into bright light, where my guide comes to meet me.
yeah, the welcome wagon. So you can see that there's definitely some compliance here. We're not going to get the whole story, but sucked up into the sky, white light, guide. The trifecta that we see constantly.
Contact in familiar settings. It may seem from the last case that once the departing soul has reached out and touched those who care about them, they go off to the spirit world without bothering to be near us again. There are people who don't feel a soul's presence right after death, but will in the future. Survivors who have reached the acceptance stage in their grief process would find solace in knowing those they have loved are still watching over them. Yet there are those who never pick up anything. Souls don't give up easily on us. Another way spirits touch people is through environmental settings associated with their memory. These contacts are effective to minds which may be closed to all other forms of spiritual communication. The following case illustrates this method. My subject, a woman called Nancy in her last life, died of a sudden stroke after 38 years of marriage to Charles. Her husband was stuck between the denial and anger stages of grief, and his emotions were so pent up that he could not accept help from their friends or seek outside professional counseling. As an engineer, his predominantly analytical mind rejected any spiritual approach to his loss as being unscientific. Nancy's soul had tried reaching her husband in several ways for months after the funeral. His stoic nature created such a wall around himself that Charles had not really cried since his wife's death. To overcome this obstacle, Nancy decided she could reach his inner mind through his sense of smell, by connecting with an environmental setting familiar to both of them. The use of sense organs by souls complements communication with the subconscious mind. Nancy decided to use her garden, specifically a rose bush, to reach Charles. Case 8. Dr. N. Why do you think Charles is going to react to your presence through a garden? Subject. Because he knows I loved my garden. For him, my plants were a take-it-or-leave-it situation. He knew it gave me pleasure, but to Charles, gardening was just a lot of hard work. Frankly, he helped very little in our yard. He was too busy with his mechanical projects. Dr. N. He paid no attention, then, to your yard work? Subject. Not unless I drew his attention to something. I had a favorite white rose bush by our front door, and whenever I cut these flowers I would wave them in front of his nose and tell Charles that if this sweet scent did not affect him, then he had no romance in his soul. We used to laugh about this a lot because Charles was actually a tender lover, but outwardly you would never know it. To avoid the issue, he would tease me by saying gruffly, "These are white roses. I like red." Dr. N. So how did you implement a plan with roses to let Charles know you are still alive and with him? Subject. My rose bush died from lack of attention after my death. In fact, my whole yard was in bad shape because Charles was not functioning well at all. One weekend he was walking around the garden in a daze, and came near some roses belonging to our next-door neighbor. He caught the smell. This is what I was waiting for, and I moved quickly into his mind. He thought of me and looked at my dead rosebush. Dr. N, you created an image of your rosebush in his mind? Subject, size. No, he would have missed that in the beginning. Charles understands tools. I started out by getting him to picture a shovel in his mind and digging. Then we made the transition to my rosebush and the garden center in town, where it could be purchased. Charles pulled out his car keys. Dr. N, you got him to walk to the car and then drive over to this nursery? Subject, grinning. It took persistence, but yes, I did. Dr. N, then what did you do? Subject, at the nursery, Charles wandered around for a bit until I was able to draw him to the roses. They were only red varieties, and that suited him. I was projecting a white color in his mind, so he asked a clerk why there were no white roses. He was told red was all they had left in stock. Charles overrode my thoughts and bought a big pot of red roses, telling the clerk to deliver them to our house because he didn't want to get his car dirty. Dr. N, what do overriding thoughts mean to you? Subject, people under stress get impatient and...
Yeah, I'm curious. What are overriding thoughts? What do those mean? Huh?
Thoughts mean to you. Subject, people under stress get impatient and fall back on established thought patterns. To Charles, the standard rose is red. That's his mindset. Since the store didn't have white roses at the moment, my husband would not deal with it further. Dr. N, so in a sense, Charles was blocking the conflicting images between his conscious thoughts and what you were projecting in his unconscious mind? Subject, yes, and also my husband is very mentally tired from my death. Dr. N, wouldn't red roses suit your purpose just as well? Subject, flatly, no. It was then I switched my energy to Sabine, the woman I knew who ran the store. She was at my funeral and was aware I loved white roses. Dr. N, I don't think I know where this is going, Nancy. There were no white roses. Charles bought the red roses and then left for home. Wasn't this enough for you? Subject, laughing at me. You men! The white rose is me. The next morning, Sabine personally drove to my house and delivered a big pot of white roses. She told my husband that she got them from another nursery and that this is what I would have wanted. Then she left Charles standing bewildered in our driveway. He carried them over to the hole he had dug, where my old rose bush had been, and stopped. The roses were in his face. He smelled their fragrance. But what was more important, the wash of white was combined with the scent. My subject pauses tearfully as she recreates this moment. Dr. N, in a low voice, you are making this all very clear. Please go on. Subject, Charles was feeling my presence at last. I now spread my energy around his torso to include the roses in a symmetrical envelopment. I wanted him to smell the white roses and my essence filtering through the energy field together. Dr. N, was this effective? Subject, softly. Finally, he knelt down next to the hole, pressing the roses to his face. Charles broke down and sobbed for a long time while I held him. When it was over, he knew I was with him still. While the spirits of husbands might use cars or sporting equipment, I find that wives often utilize garden settings to reach their mates. Another client told me about his wife applying the planting of an oak tree to make her connection. Before this widower saw me, he wrote, even if what happened to me was not from my wife, does it matter? The main thing is that in some way...
Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Even if it wasn't from my wife, does it matter?
Make her connection. Before this widower saw me, he wrote, even if what happened to me was not from my wife, does it matter? The main thing is that in some way I am using the emotional energy generated by my feeling she was with me to tap into my inner resources, which previously were not available. I am no longer in an abyss without a glimmer of light.
And guess what happens? That goes away. I mean, I hate to break it to people here, but these are distinct. When these things occur, they're very, very specific moments in your life. They are not like it's like they're saying, oh, it's great, I was able to tap into something. Well, a few months down the road, a few weeks down the road, guess what? It goes away. The memory's there, which, it helps the person in that moment, and that's really great that it does. But what it's there for, that's the problem. It's there as deception and manipulation, and that's the problem. So we can say, yeah, we appreciate that these moments do occur and help people in their time of need, but the reason they're occurring is absolutely appalling.
In talking with people about such experiences, which some call mystical, it is important to consider the possibility of a spiritual source. If we can feed into a highly charged state of emotion during our grief, we can both heal and learn more about our inner selves. Spirits may prefer to communicate with us in the form of ideas. Here is a quote from a letter I received from a former client about his departed wife, Gwen. I believe our session together assisted in his discovery of the best way to receive his wife's thoughts. I've learned we don't all have equal abilities as souls to communicate with each other. Sending and receiving messages is a skill that needs to be refined with practice.
Okay, now, yeah. I mean, that's a problem, isn't it? Kind of not a level playing field. Kind of like a lot of things in life. You kind of got to get good at it and this and that. And then even then, what you're getting out of it in the grand scheme of things is barely anything. It's a joke. And it's a lot of these past life regressions, they are not, they're interesting. There's a lot of things to be taken from them. And there's a lot of patterns, which helps prove the soul trap. But even in near-death experiences, what ends up coming as a result of these experiences, they help the person a little bit. They don't solve world hunger. They don't solve big problems. Like the people that come back from these experiences and say, "Oh, I knew everything. There was not a question I didn't have that wasn't answered, that I didn't know or was told." That's the thing. They're being told the answer, and they openly admit it. They openly say it. But yet somehow they knew all the answers and all the problems and all this and all that. But come back here, it's the same old, but they've improved their lives. Again, that's great that they've improved their lives. Possibly even some people around them. Maybe they got, a book out of it sometimes, or able to do a profession that's more spiritually based, and they live a better life because of it. All the power to them. But that doesn't take away from the scam that's going on here. That's the point that needs to be just constantly brought up, because there's no other way to put it than what's going on is a scam. It's a scam.
I finally recognized the imprint of Gwen's thoughts after getting nothing during my meditations. She was a literary person who used word thoughts rather than pictures to generate feeling in me. I had to learn to integrate word flashes from her into my own manner of speaking, which she knows, in order to decipher what she was telling me. I see more clearly now how I can touch Gwen with my mind. Strangers as Messengers. Case 9. Derek was a man in his 60s who came to see me from Canada to evaluate his life and try and resolve his greatest sadness. When he was a young man, he lost his beautiful 4-year-old daughter, Julia. Her death was sudden, unexpected, and so devastating that he and his wife decided to have no more children. I placed Derek in deep hypnosis and took him to a scene following his last life, where he appeared in front of his counsel. We then discovered that one of his major current life lessons was learning to cope with tragedy. Derek had been deficient in this area during his past 2 lives by falling apart and making life more difficult for family members who depended upon him. He is doing much better in his current life. What was especially interesting for me about this case was a single incident that happened to Derek some 20 years after Julia's death. Derek had recently lost his wife to cancer and was in mourning. One day, feeling very despondent, he walked to a nearby amusement park. After a while, he sat down on a bench near a carousel. Listening to the music, Derek watched the children happily going around in circles on colorful wooden animals. He saw from a distance one little girl who looked like Julia, and tears flooded his eyes. Just then a young woman of about 20 appeared and asked if she could sit down next to him. It was a warm day. She was dressed in white muslin, holding a cold drink in her hand. Derek nodded but said nothing, while the woman enjoyed her drink and talked about growing up in England and coming to Canada because she was particularly attracted to Vancouver. She introduced herself as Heather, and Derek noticed a glow of sunlight around her that gave the young woman a shining, angelic quality. Time seemed to be suspended for Derek as the conversation turned to family and what Heather was going to do with her new life in Canada. Derek found himself talking to her as a father, and the more they conversed, the more he felt he knew her. Finally, Heather stood up and placed her hand tenderly on Derek's shoulder. She smiled at him and said, "I know you are worried about me. Please don't be. I'm all right, and it's going to be a wonderful life. We will see each other again someday, I know."
Cue the music.
Derek told me that as Heather walked away and gave him a final wave, he saw his daughter and felt at peace. During our session, Derek recognized that the reincarnated soul of Julia had come to him and provided the assurance he had not really lost her. When we suffer the absence of people we love, they may come to us in mysterious ways, often when our minds are detached in a shallow alpha state. Take these moments as messages from the other side and allow them to bring sustenance to you. Angels or other heavenly hosts. In recent years, there has been
It's an energy transfer. That's what it is.
a resurgence in the popularity of angels. The Roman Catholic Church defines angels as spiritual, intelligent, non-corporeal beings who are servants and messengers of God. The position of the Christian Church is that these beings have never incarnated on earth. We think of angels as white-robed figures with wings and a halo, theological images, which may have come down to us from the Middle Ages. Many clients initially think they see angels when I regress them into the spirit world, especially those with strong religious convictions. This reaction is similar to the devotional responses of some people who have had near-death experiences. However, regardless of prior religious conditioning, my subjects soon realize the etheric beings they are visualizing in hypnosis represent their guides and soul companions who have come to meet them. These spiritual beings are surrounded by white light and may appear in robes.
All right, here we go. It's a familiar sound, isn't it? Let's rewind. Listen closely.
Just convictions. This reaction is similar to the devotional responses of some people who have had near-death experiences. However, regardless of prior religious conditioning, my subjects soon realize the etheric beings they are visualizing in hypnosis represent their guides and soul companions who have come to meet them.
So, etheric beings in the form of guides and the group are there to meet them and make sure that the narrative is brought out properly, controlled. There are also certain aspects to these regressions that we don't really get much information on. And one of the big ones that everyone should be pretty concerned about is the soul classes. We get very, very little information on just what the hell is going on in these soul classes. What the hell is going on? We get very little information on that. And it's almost as if that's by design. What the hell is going on in those things? We get no information. And the information that we do get is pathetic. It's a few things here and there. And that's by design. Because guess what the soul classes are? They're indoctrination camps. That's what they are. They're manipulation centers. Where your group gets together and are taught certain things. Like, okay, you gotta comply with this, you gotta comply with this, you gotta, you're kind of pushed towards maybe this job when you reincarnate, or this type of body, or maybe you'll have this horrible terminal illness when you get down there at some point. Or maybe you'll be born and have to live in a wheelchair your whole life. I don't know. Something along those lines. Oh, and you're going to meet, Sally at a bus stop. But, and she's part of your soul group. But, you're going to get hit by a bus. But the bright side of getting hit by a bus is that you'll get married to her. You'll be lovers and everything will be great. I mean, seriously, who the hell knows what is going on there?
These spiritual beings are surrounded by white light and may appear in robes. In my work, guides are sometimes described as guardian angels, although our personal teachers are beings who have incarnated in physical form long before graduating to the level of guides. An intimate soulmate in discarnate form can also come to the gate to comfort us in times of need. I feel believing in angels emanates from an inner desire for personal protection on the part of many people. In making this observation, it is not my intention to set aside the faith of millions of religious people in angels. For many years, I lacked faith in anything beyond my own existence. I know the importance of believing in something greater than yourself. Our faith is what sustains us in life, and this applies to believing that there are superior beings who watch over us. My case presentations are intended to give weight to the concept of benevolent spirits in our lives. Our spiritual teachers have different styles and techniques, just as teachers on earth. Their immortal character has been matched to our own essence in a variety of ways. The next two abbreviated cases illustrate my contention that personal guides and soulmates, however they are represented, contact us from the other side if we require consolation. Case 10. The following statements come from Renee, a 40-year-old widow who lost her husband Harry 3 months before our appointment. I waited until after our session before asking her the series of questions that follow. My intent was to have Renee contrast the conscious versus superconscious imagery she had of her guide, Nyath. Dr. N. Before our session today, have you had any contact with the being you saw in hypnosis as Nyath? Subject. Yes. Since Harry's death, Nyath has come to me during my dark hours. Dr. N. Did Nyath appear to be the same to you before and after this hypnosis session? Subject. No, I didn't see her quite the same way. I thought she was an angel before, and now I see Nyath as my teacher. Dr. N. Were her face and demeanor different to you while you were under hypnosis, compared to what you saw when awake? Subject laughs. Today there were no wings or a halo, But bright light, that was the same. And her face and gentle manner were the same, too. I also see that in our spirit group she can be sharply instructive. Dr. N. More of a teacher and less of a grief counselor, you mean? Subject. Yes, perhaps that's it. Right after Harry's death, she was so sweet and understanding when she came to me. Rushing on. That doesn't mean she isn't nice in the spirit world, just more exacting. Dr. N. Did you do anything to summon Nyath right after Harry's death? Subject. I was crying for help after the funeral. I found out that I needed to be alone and very still. To listen. Dr. N. Does this mean you heard Nyath rather than actually saw her? Subject. No. In the beginning I saw her floating over my head in my bedroom. I had my arms wrapped around a pillow, pretending it was Harry, but I had stopped crying. She became fuzzy after I first saw her, and I realized then I had to listen carefully for her voice. In the days that followed, I heard Nyath more than I saw her, but I had to listen. Dr. N. Does that mean concentrate? Subject. Yes. Well, no. More allowing my mind to go free from my body. Dr. N. What happens when you don't listen properly, but you want her messages? Subject. Then she communicates with me through my feelings. Dr. N. In what way? Subject. Oh, I might be driving alone or out walking by myself, wondering about doing something, taking a certain action. She will make me feel good about it if I am supposed to do it, if it is right. Dr. N. And what if the action you are considering would be wrong for you? Then what? Subject. Nyath will make me feel uneasy about doing it. I will know in my gut it is a wrong move. My next case excerpt involves a young man who died in a car crash in 1942 at age 36. He gives us another perspective on the mythology of angels from a soul reaching back to Earth. Case 11.
I just want to say something before we go on to case 11 here. And just so you know, we've got about another 22 minutes left in this chapter, and then we're going to wrap it up. But just on that last case, we heard that the being Naya was interacting with at one point was an angel and then became a guide. So the entity that she was dealing with was basically coming in different forms, probably based on the incarnation. That's what I would imagine is happening. Whatever deceptive programming and form that the being has to take in relation to the incarnation Naya was experiencing is what will be received. There also is, of course, the belief system, which is a huge part of this. And near-death experiences point heavily that belief-based systems that you hold dear are likely what will be used against you. That's what you're going to see. So just keep that in mind, that's all. So we're going to move on to case 11.
The mythology of angels, from a soul reaching back to Earth. Case 11. Dr. N. Tell me what you did for your wife after the crash. Subject. I stayed around for 3 days with Betty to lessen her heaviness. I positioned myself over her head, so our energy fields crossed in such a way that I could soothe her by matching our vibrations. Dr. N. Did you employ any other techniques? Subject. Yes, I projected my likeness in front of her face. Dr. N. Was this effective? Subject, playfully. Initially, she thought I was Jesus. The second day, she was confused, and the third day, Betty was convinced I was an angel.
Interesting. She thought he was Jesus. Boy, isn't that very telling. We've seen that before with near-death experiences where people think they're talking to Jesus or meeting Jesus. And we're supposed to say that there's some confusion here. Not that it might be happening on purpose, and we're just getting a little bit of a edited story, right? Come on now. We can see between the lines, or read between the lines here. Or listen between the lines here, actually. I'm going to rewind that just a little bit.
My likeness in front of her face. Dr. N. Was this effective? Subject, playfully. Initially, she thought I was Jesus. The second day, she was confused, and the third day, Betty was convinced I was an angel. My wife is very religious. Dr. N. Are you bothered that she didn't recognize you because of her religious convictions? Subject, not at all. Then, after some hesitation, oh, I suppose it would please me if Betty realized it was me, but her feeling better is my main concern. Betty is convinced I am a heavenly deity, and that is okay because I do represent spiritual help for her.
Betty is convinced I am a spiritual deity. Boom! Right in your face. Right in our face. It's saying it. Betty's religious. Betty thinks she sees Jesus. Betty thinks she's dealing with a spiritual deity. Boy, what else is next?
Dr. N. Would she feel even better knowing it was you? Subject. Look, Betty thinks I'm in heaven and can't help her. Her angel is able to do so because it's really me. So I'm in disguise. What's the difference as long as my goal to help her is accomplished?
Wow. Wow. What's the difference as long as my goal is achieved to help her?
In heaven and can't help her. Her angel is able to do so because it's really me. So I'm in disguise. What's the difference as long as my goal to help her is accomplished?
Unreal.
Dr. N. Well, since Betty has not connected you with your disguise, is there any other way you can communicate on a more personal level? Subject smiles. Through my best friend, Ted. He consoles her and gives her advice with day-to-day details. Later, I hover over the both of them, sending permissive messages. Subject then laughs. Dr. N. What do you find humorous? Subject. Ted is not married. He has been in love with Betty for a long time, but she doesn't realize it yet. Dr. N. Is this all right with you? Subject. Cheerfully, yet with nostalgia. Sure. I'm relieved he can do what I can't anymore for her, at least until she returns home to me. Finally, there are those angel-like spirits who regularly come to Earth between lives, simply to help people they don't know who are in distress. They may be healers in training, as was true with the client who said to me, My guide and I assisted a boy in India who was drowning and consumed by fear. His parents pulled him from the river and were trying to resuscitate him, but he was not responding well. I placed my hands on his head to quiet his fear, sent a spike of energy into his heart to bring warmth into his body, and superimposed his essence with mine for a moment to help him cough up the water and start breathing again. We were able to help a total of 24 people on that trip to Earth.
Oh.
Emotional recovery of souls and survivors. The last remarks from Case 11 about his wife Betty, and those of Case 3 who talked about her husband Kevin, touch upon the issue of later relationships by the survivor. Falling in love again after the death of a spouse sometimes causes feelings of guilt and even betrayal. In both these cases, we saw that the departing spouses only wanted their surviving mates to be happy and loved. However, just because spirits want this for us does not mean that we can easily compartmentalize our expressions of intimacy to past and present loves. People who have had long, happy first marriages and then lose a spouse make excellent candidates for a successful second marriage. This is a tribute to the first relationship.
Isn't it amazing that in these regressions, everything is just, it's the way it's supposed to be. There can't possibly be anything deceptive about it, right? I mean, even though we see deception and we hear it, but we get glimpses of it by reading between the lines. It's just amazing how it can be just go completely over Newton's head that maybe, just maybe, some of them are bad, or some of them have evil agendas. We've gotten some glimpses of it, but overall, everything's just love and light.
Having other relationships neither lessens nor dishonors our first love. It only validates that love, providing a state of healthy acceptance has been reached in between. I know placing aside feelings of guilt is easier said than done. I have received letters from widows and widowers asking me if their departed spouses could actually be watching them in the bedroom with someone else. In my summary of the spirit world, I indicated that souls lose most of their negative emotional baggage when they shed their bodies. Although it is true we may carry the imprint of some emotional trauma from a past life into the next one, this condition is in a state of abeyance until we return to a new body. Also, a great deal of negative energy is expelled during the early stages of our return to the spirit world.
Well, isn't it nice that it's some of this is paused while you're in the astral, waiting to come over for an incarnation, and then when you reincarnate, all of a sudden that trauma comes back once you reach a physical body. How wonderful! How wonderful! So kind, so kind. So it could be theoretically removed while you're in the astral, but once you hit the body again, here you go, guys. Have your trauma and make sure you carry that guilt over from that previous lifetime. Ooh, doggy.
Bodies. Souls lose most of their... In my summary of the spirit world, I indicated that souls lose most of their negative emotional baggage when they shed their bodies. Although it is true we may carry the imprint of some emotional trauma from a past life into the next one, this condition is in a state of abeyance until we return to a new body. Also, a great deal of negative energy is expelled during the early stages of our return to the spirit world, especially after deprogramming during orientation. When a soul once again returns to a pure energy state in the spirit world, it no longer feels hate, anger, envy, jealousy, and the like. It has come to Earth to experience these sorts of emotions and learn from them. But after departing from Earth, do souls feel any sadness for what they've left behind? Certainly souls carry nostalgia for the good times in all their past physical lives. This is tempered by a state of blissful omniscience and such a heightened sense of well-being that souls feel more alive than when they were on Earth. Nevertheless, I have found two sorts of negative emotions that exist within souls, both of which involve a form of sadness. One of them I would call karmic guilt for making very poor choices, especially when others were hurt by these actions.
Here we go.
I will treat these aspects later under karma. The other form of sadness for souls is not melancholy, dejection, or a mournful unhappiness in the way life has gone on without them since their departure. Rather, sadness in souls comes from a longing to reunite with the source of their existence. I believe all souls, regardless of their level of development, have this longing to seek perfection for the same reason. The motivating factor...
Perfection that cannot be attained when you're within this system. It's impossible. The standards that we have come to recognize within this system is absolutely ridiculous. The human body, the human form, the human brain, the conditions in which the human is brought up in, no, it's just not possible. This perfection is impossible. And hence that karmic guilt that carries over lifetime after lifetime. Attaining this is impossible unless you choose the dark side. I'm thoroughly convinced of that. I see nothing else but that. That's how you quote unquote win in this realm, okay? Is if you're dark. You're dark, you like material existence, well, you're going to get promoted. But if you want to get out of here, you got to claim your sovereignty at the time of death. It's that simple. You have to deny these illusions. It's so simple. That's the whole ball game. Don't sign on to the illusions. I don't care what comes in your face. You cannot budge. Otherwise, you'll end up right back here. I see no other choice. There's no other way. You have to learn your way out while you're here, because you need that moment, that specific moment that we talk about. I call it the sweet spot. Okay? The time when you've just died. Okay? You're just dying, and you are gathering your natural essence back, your true self, okay? But what happens is in that sweet spot, you have these illusions that come in the form of your deceased family members or deities or these soul, these controllers, the teachers, the guides, the masters, you name it, okay? It's all there. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet of fuckery, ready and waiting to steal your sovereignty away. And then once you are caught in the cogs of the wheel of the system, you lose memory. It's not all accessible when you're agreeing and consenting to go along with the game. You're dragged back in it. And they have all these systems in place, ready and waiting, just in case you do start thinking a little bit too much for yourself. Now, in near-death experiences, there are prime moments that we can refer to, similar to the sweet spot, okay, where the person having the experience just dies, okay? He just clinical death. And they have no feelings of emotion, of love, of strong love, or this or that. They just feel neutral and just exist. They realize, yes, I have family, yes, I have this, yes, I have that, and they feel great. But the point when things start to change is when the love bomb hits. And the most recent near-death experience I did a commentary on, you can watch, it's my last video. You'll see that moment. I show that moment very clearly. And he's basically in a position where he's just existing. Doesn't have the range of emotions that we are familiar with here. But then all of a sudden, this blue light appears, and it's love, and everything's great, and blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on this whole little journey, and ends up coming out of the near-death experience later on becoming a concert pianist. Something that he did not do prior to the near-death experience. It's a very interesting case. So take a look at it. But I just want to, that's really important to point out that there is that moment that you have to take advantage of. Otherwise, I don't know.
For those souls who come to Earth, is growth. Thus, the trace of sadness I discern in souls is the absence of elements in their immortal character that they must find to make their energy complete. And so, it is a soul's destiny to search for truth in their experiences in order to gain wisdom. It is important for the survivor to know that longing does not compromise a soul's feeling of empathy, sympathy, and compassion for those who grieve for them. Since the immortal character of the soul is no longer encumbered by individual temperament and the chemistry of its last body, it is at peace. Souls have much better things to do than interfere with people on earth. In rare cases, certain souls are so disturbed by an act of injustice against them in life that they won't leave Earth's astral plane after death until they gain some sort of resolution. I will discuss more of this phenomenon under the subject of ghosts. The spiritual conflict with these souls does not include sadness over you finding happiness with someone else, unless, of course, you did something like murder your lover to be with another. The one great advantage the departed soul has over a survivor is knowing it is still alive and will be seeing everyone who is meaningful to them again. The integrity of souls involves an all-consuming desire that those they love have the free choice to finish their lives in any way they want. If you wish a soul to come to you, it probably will. Otherwise, your privacy is respected. Besides, a part of your energy which you left behind in the spirit world is always there for them. Since souls lose so many negative emotions upon re-entering the spirit world, it follows that their positive affections also undergo alterations. For instance, souls feel great love, but this love places no conditions upon others for reciprocity, because...
Did you hear how alterations was one of the terms used?
Any negative emotions upon re-entering the spirit world, it follows that their positive affections also undergo alterations. For instance, souls feel great love, but this love places no conditions upon others for reciprocity, because it is given freely. Souls display a universal coherence with each other that is so absolute it is incomprehensible on earth. This is one reason why souls appear to be both abstract and empathetic to us at the same time. I have heard of some cultural traditions which advise that survivors must let the deceased go and not try to communicate with them because souls have more important work to do. Indeed, souls do not want you to become dependent upon communication with them to the detriment of independent decision-making. Yet, many survivors require not only solace, but also some sort of approval in the forming of a new relationship. I hope my next case will help dispel the idea that the departed are uninterested in your future. Your privacy is respected by the spirit of your love when you are content.
Your privacy is respected? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That could be the furthest thing from the truth. Come on now.
This case will help dispel the idea that the departed are uninterested in your future. Your privacy is respected by the spirit of your love when you are content. Still, if a prospective course of action, particularly bonding with someone else, leaves you unsettled, they might try to make their opinions known. Because of the nature of soul duality, they are quite capable of performing many tasks at once.
Now, soul duality. Duality doesn't exist when you're in your natural, true state. I see it in those near-death experiences where that does it, it's non-existent. It's once the interruption comes where there becomes an issue.
This includes a soul's quiet time in solitude, where they focus energy on people they have left behind. Souls do this to bring us greater peace, even when we are not calling on them for help. Case 12. George.
Okay, just so you guys know, this should be the last case of the day. We got about another 12 more minutes in this final chapter, which is chapter 2.
Calling on them for help. Case 12. George came to me in a state of some distress over feelings of guilt about a new love in his life. He had been a widower for 2 years after a long and happy marriage to Frances. George wondered if she was looking down on him with displeasure over his developing relationship with Dorothy. I was told Dorothy and her deceased husband Frank had been close friends of George and Frances. Nonetheless, George felt his increased attraction to Dorothy might be considered an act of betrayal. I begin this case at the point in our session when George sees Frances after a former life together. Dr. N. Now that you have entered the circle of your soulmates, who comes forward first? Subject cries out, "Oh God, it's Frances. It's her. I've missed you so much, dear. She is so beautiful. We have been together from the beginning." Dr. N. You see that you never really lost her in your current life, don't you? And that she will be waiting for you when it is your time to go? Subject. Yes, I always felt it, but now I know. Note. George now breaks down and we are unable to continue for a while. During this time, I want my subject to get used to hugging his wife again and talking to her through his superconscious mind. He strongly believes that his guide and my own conspired to bring him to this juncture. I explain that the information he will gain should help him move on in his life with Dorothy. The catalyst for this awareness is evident when we start to identify other members of George's soul group. Dr. N. I want you now to identify the figures standing near Frances. Subject brightens. Oh, really? I can't believe... But of course, it makes sense now. Dr. N. What makes sense? Subject. It's Dorothy, and becomes very emotional. And Frank. They are standing together next to Frances, smiling at me. Don't you see? Dr. N. What should I see? Subject. That they have brought us closer together, Dorothy and me. Dr. N. Explain why you think this is so. Subject, impatient with me. They are happy that we have found each other in an intimate way. Dorothy has grieved a long time herself over Frank, and the grief we both feel is being dispelled by having the company of each other. Dr. N. And you see that all four of you are in the same soul group? Subject. Yes, but I had no idea this was true. Dr. N.
What?
How are Frances and
All four in the same soul group, but didn't know this was true.
Same soul group? Subject. Yes, but I had no idea this was true. Dr. N. How are Frances and Dorothy different as souls? Subject. Frances is a very strong teaching soul, while Dorothy is more artistic and creative. Gentle. Dorothy is a peaceful spirit and able to adapt more easily to existing conditions than the rest of us. Dr. N. Now that you have the approval of Frances and Frank, what will Dorothy gain from associating with you as your second wife in this life? Subject. Comfort, understanding, love. I can provide her with more protection because I am goal-oriented. I challenge things Dorothy takes for granted. She is very accepting. We have a good balance. Dr. N. Is Dorothy your primary soulmate? Subject, emphatically. No, it's Frances. Dorothy usually matches with Frank in their lives, but we are all very close. Dr. N. Have you and Dorothy worked together before in other lives? Subject. Yes, but in different situations. She often takes the role of my sister, a niece, or a close friend. Dr. N. Why are you usually matched with Frances as a mate? Subject. Frances and I have been with each other from the beginning. We are so close because we have struggled together, helping each other. She was always able to make me laugh at my serious nature, at my foolishness. When I closed this segment of our session, I felt that George had gained much insight. He was overjoyed at learning that it was no accident he and Dorothy were drawn together.
Overjoyed.
All four souls knew their current timelines in advance. I have had similar information come to me from clients who were not in the same soul group as their new love interest, but were connected as affiliated souls from nearby groups. I find most people know if the person they live with is not a significant soulmate. This does not mean they can't have good relationships with souls out of their group. I will quote the statement from a client who died before his wife in their previous life together. When I reach out to comfort my wife after my death, I do so as a friend and partner. We were not really in love. She was not an intimate soulmate for me, nor was I to her. I have a great deal of respect for her. We needed this relationship to work on those things which played to our individual strengths and weaknesses.
Yes, you needed
So
it.
I don't say, "I love you," into her mind, because she would know it isn't true. She might then confuse my spirit with her soulmate. Our life contract is done, and if she wishes, I want her to take another person into her heart. Reuniting with those we love. It is fitting that I close this chapter on death with a case illustrating what it is like for soulmates who reunite on the other side. The case involves a widow who meets her husband at the gateway following a long separation. Case 13.
Oh, we got
Dr.
one more.
N.
Okay.
Who meets you right after death? Subject. It's him, Eric.
Wow.
Oh, at last. At last. My love. Dr. N. After calming my client. This man is your husband. Subject. Yes, we are coming together right after I cross over, before I see our guide. Dr. N. Tell me how everything unfolds, including the way feelings of endearment are transmitted between you and Eric. Subject. We start with the eyes. From a little distance away, looking deep into each other. The knowing of everything flowing between our minds, of all that we have meant to each other. Our energy gets sucked up into a magnetic pool of indescribable joy, blending the two of us together. Dr. N. At this moment, have you both assumed the physical form you had in the last life? Subject, laughing. Yes, very rapidly we start with the first time we met, how we looked to each other, and move through the phases of body changes during our long marriage. It's not definitive because we don't settle on just 1 year of our life together. It's more swirling energy patterns right now. We even pick up on other bodies we had together in previous lives, too. Dr. N. Were you usually female in those lives? Subject. Mostly, yes. Later, we will revert to a mixed gender pattern, because there were good times in our past lives when he was female and I was male.
Oh boy, that would go over well today, wouldn't it?
Pause. But it is just fun right now to be the people we were in our last life. Note. My client asks me to please not ask her any more questions for a few minutes. She and Eric embrace, and when she speaks to me again, it is to describe how their energy flowed together. Subject. It is an ecstasy of coalescing. Dr. N. This spiritual passion sounds almost erotic to me. Subject. Of course, but it is so much more. I can't really describe it, but the rapture we feel for each other comes from all our contact together in hundreds of lives, combined with memories of the blissful state we spend reunited between lives. Dr. N. And how does the blending of your energy with your husband make you feel afterward? Subject bursts out laughing. Like really wonderful sex, only better. Then, more seriously, you must understand that I died as an 83-year-old sick woman. I was tired. It was a long life, and I was a cold stove that needed warming up. Dr. N. Cold stove. Subject, yes. I need energy rejuvenation. There is always a transfer of positive energy when we are met by our guides, or by someone we love. Eric sparks up my time.
Yeah, you can say that again. We see that and all the time in near-death experiences. We're all, like we were just talking about earlier with the love bomb, and how the guides or the deceased loved ones come and all of a sudden give this burst of energy. We can also associate it with a recharge, like was just worded here, or just spoken of here.
Yes, I need energy rejuvenation. There is always a transfer of positive energy when we are met by our guides, or by someone we love. Eric sparks up my tired energy. He lights a fire inside me to make me whole again. Dr. N, when this meeting is over, what do the two of you do? Subject, our teacher comes to welcome me back, and I am escorted through the mist to our center. When a subject tells me that re-entering the spirit world has the effect of being made whole again, this requires qualification. We receive an infusion of new energy from soulmates and guides, who may also transfer part of the energy we left behind back into us as well. However, as I
gotta ask yourself, why is that necessary? Why don't you just deal with your own energy? You're in your astral form, you've shed your body. Why is that necessary? Why do you need other beings, quote-unquote, energy? Because it's bullshit energy. Deception energy. Manipulation energy. That's what it is.
said when discussing spiritual longing, complete wholeness will not take place until our work is done. Despite this, being restored to what we were before the life began is like feeling whole once again. A subject put it this way: death is like waking up after a long sleep where you had just a muddled awareness. The release you feel is one that comes after crying, only here you are not crying. I have tried to show death from the perspective of the soul in order to ease the pain of those left behind. As Plato said, once free of the body, the soul is able to see truth clearly, because it is more pure than before, and recalls the pure ideas which it knew before. Survivors must learn to function again without the physical presence of the person they loved, by trusting the departed soul is still with them. Acceptance of loss comes one day at a time. Healing is a progression of mental steps that begins with having faith you are not truly alone. In order to complete the life contract you made in advance with the departed, it is necessary to rejoin the rest of humanity as an active participant. You will see
It's necessary.
love again soon enough. I am hopeful my years of research into the life we lead as souls may assist survivors in recognizing that death only exchanges one reality for another in the long continuum of existence.
And the long continuum of lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, reincarnation after reincarnation after reincarnation. Ugh. Thank God this is the last time. That's all I gotta say. All right, my friends, brothers, sisters, it's been a heck of a journey in part one, and I thank you all for spending time with me today and hearing this information. And for anyone new, there is an Odyssey link. If you'd like to join me over on Odyssey, or anyone else here who hasn't signed up for Odyssey, I'll be doing Odyssey exclusive live streams over there from time to time. And I also have 2 backup channels here on YouTube, as well as a Twitter account, which I really don't use that often. But all these things are just an alternative way to stay in touch if necessary. And last thing is going to be making an announcement sometime soon on a website. working on getting that going, and I'd like to set up a kind of like a small community on a site where things are more protected. So keep an eye out for that. Also, I know people were asking about the Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap research series. That, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, if you're just getting here, came in late, that's still being worked on. So hang in there. It'll be out when it gets out, and it's going to be coming out in segments as well. So that's going to about wrap it up. Expect part 2 of this series probably on Saturday or Sunday. I'm likely shooting for Saturday, but notifications will be sent out, so keep an eye out for that. And I will see you all again very soon. Much love and blessings to you all. Thank you.